Hello, Ladybugs and Yellow Jackets. Welcome back to this Saturday's episode of The Breakfast Club. We are live and unsupervised today because Got That Funk is somewhere. And that has left us in charge. And I don't really know where to start today. I guess there were some topics I saw in the Twitter, and if one of you guys wants to maybe broach topic number one, please remind me of what those are.
Well,
other than Joe Biden and dropping bombs.
I don't know what was on Twitter, but did everyone see the golden calf at CPAC? I mean, the golden Trump at CPAC.
I did see tell of that. Yes,
I did. Yeah. I thought it was a meme because I didn't look at it very closely. I just thought it was a meme that somebody made. No. That's actually a real thing.
That's actually a real thing. They literally made a golden idol to Donald Trump. So, like, right out of the fucking Bible, right out of Exodus 32.
The thing that struck me about it was it looked like a South Park caricature.
Oh my gosh! Surely, I mean, that thing is not actually gold.
No, but it's gold color.
It's golden.
Yeah, golden.
Yeah, golden, just like the calf, golden.
If you think that's a bit tone deaf for the mostly Christian crowd there, right now, as we speak, the term Nazi is trending on Twitter because the CPAC stage almost looks like it was designed after the swastika.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
Like, it's got little prosceniums that thrust off of it.
Where's it being?
Like, it looks kind of like it was designed to celebrate a swastika. Like, if you just gave it some different coloring, it would look like a really good stage for Hitler.
Where's it being held? Nuremberg, Oklahoma.
I'm curious. Do you think that it is better or worse if all of the people who are, I don't know, I guess in that political party actually get rallied into a single place so we know where they're all at? Or is it better that they not have anything that could be rallied behind and are left to be scattered?
I think when they're rallied together, they can do a lot of damage. So, you know, when in fact, that's part of the problem. Like prior to Trump, they were scattered and they would do some things here and there, but they didn't have that much sway. Now they're all organized and they tried to take over the government. So, I'm all for scattering.
I prefer to see them where they're visible, to be honest. But then I'm the other side of the Atlantic. So easier to hide from us.
That's kind of the argument for signs that, tell people where they're welcome or not. At least they're, if there are signs that then up front that you're going to experience some discrimination. But I'd rather the discrimination just didn't exist.
Right. Yeah, that would be
good. I suppose it's a difference between them being visible and the prejudices being visible. Isn't it?
I kind of wonder, though. I guess that sometimes I think that it's easier for people to be prejudiced than it is for them to be not prejudiced. And so I guess maybe if, like you guys are saying, when they kind of rally together, it sort of creates a safe space for that to come into being. And people that might kind of have just not really been anywhere before might fall into that more easily than, they may have just been nothing, but if they then become surrounded by it or close to it, in its proximity, then they might fall into it and then become to adopt it, I guess. What do you say?
There's definitely a peer pressure kind of thing. I mean, some of the people who have gotten out of it, they got into it in the first place because of friends of theirs who were into that, and there was kind of that groupthink thing when you're in groups. I mean, look at what's happened with Flat Earth. I mean, Flat Earthers were a joke 20 years ago. Now there's millions of them.
Yeah.
They're still a joke, but there's lots of them now.
It also might be a little bit insensitive culturally to call CPAC a safe space.
I like
Just
the term TPAC that was crowned.
I really want to see these people. Just I can't even understand how can they be so unaware about the golden Trump, right? How can
well, do you know what CPAC stands for?
Actually, I don't.
Culty people acting culty.
No, it doesn't really stand.
I like it. I like it.
I thought it stood for like, well, around here we use the term CPAC, but it stands for Seattle Pacific, and I'm pretty sure that's not what this CPAC is. So,
no. Wrong C.
Wrong C.
It's like Conservative Political Action Committee or something like that.
Yeah,
That would make
Conservative
sense.
Political Action Committee.
But you know, and the thing is, it's always been kind of out there because it's always been the worst of the worst. It's just that the worst has gotten so bad there now that, you know, yeah, they're. I don't think it's an accident that the thing, like Mike said, that it's designed to look like a swastika. You know, their true colors are really coming out.
Well, here's the thing. According to reports, and obviously until it happens tomorrow, but according to reports that I've heard, tomorrow the golden calf is due to speak, and they've made him keynote speaker, and he intends to basically refloat the big lie that he actually won. And it kind of brought me on, that kind of leads on to one of the topics I wanted to bring up tonight, which was the March the 4th thing. From what I understand, there's a bunch of I hesitate to use the term that I used before, so I'll use Trumpkins. There's a lot of the Trumpkins that are expecting March 4th to be the day that Donald uses whatever means, presumably the military, to retake control and be sworn in as the 19th legitimate president.
What?
Yes, the 19th, because it goes all the way back to the last time there was a March 4th was used to, or was it inaugurate?
Yes.
Oh my God, are you freaking kidding me? These guys are so ridiculous. Bunch of
Yeah.
dirtbags.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
apparently that was.
Can we ask them instead to celebrate the Ides of March as long as they want to celebrate things in March? Please celebrate that one.
Well, and a lot of this goes to the. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of sovereign citizens. You know, he calls themselves either sovereign citizens, free men of the land, and then there's a black offshoot called what was it they call themselves? Moorish Americans. Like they're like one of the Moors, you know, like the people who invaded Western Europe from North Africa. But they basically believe that there hasn't been a legitimate government since like the early 1800s, and that the United States is now a corporation. And so they're the ones, if you've ever seen these guys that, you know, they get stopped by the cops and they say, "Well, I'm not driving, I'm traveling," you know, and they mix and match two different parts of the law, and they think that they're all contiguous, and it's like because they're using a definition from one part of the law in a frame that it doesn't apply, and they you know, and they don't think they have to pay their taxes, and because we're not using the gold standard, it's really crazy shit.
They're like the people on Facebook that think that by declaring that I don't give Facebook permission to use my photos, that Facebook now doesn't have permission to use their photos. It's like that. Right. Like, I declare myself a sovereign citizen, and therefore I don't have to. As well, I guess you can argue about that with your lawyer from your jail cell.
Yeah, that's the basic premise is not recognizing the jurisdiction and the authority of the courts. We've got a similar movement over here, but it does actually have a firmer legal foundation because of the Romanis and the Gypsies that used to populate Europe up until the 19th and early 20th centuries.
I just
my one of my favorite ones of the sovereign citizens. This guy, he's in front of the judge because he's drunk. He had been drunk driving, and he says that he's that name that is that he's using, that's not him. He's not the person, because he thinks a person is a corporation, and he's like he's the agent and the settler, and he goes through this whole big rigmarole, and at the end, I forget the guy's last name, was David something, but so the judge is like he keeps telling the judge, well, I'm not the person, and so the judge says to him, well, when you see the person, David Hall, when you see the person, David Hall, tell him he's not getting out of jail anytime soon either.
I'm flabbergasted at how these folks. I'm playing with the screen stuff. This is what happens when I get to be in charge.
Don't let the power go to your head.
Can I be a bobblehead of myself? I want a Sister Danger bobblehead. That would be excellent. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to sidetrack that. But I'm happy to stick with the fingers up for raising hands too.
Well, yeah. I mean, Joe's kind of got that right.
What is their actual goal?
Basically, freedom from the law is what I gather. But yeah, basically the distinction is made between the legal entity and the natural person. And the legal entity is what is being the subject of the court case, and it's that authority, that jurisdiction that gets rejected out of hand. And they use it to all sorts of legal wrangling to nullify various charges against them, because those charges are brought against the legal entity and not the natural person. And they think by refusing to acknowledge they are the legal entity that they can walk out of a courtroom free and clear. And that's just not how the law works.
Yeah, they think they can just pay a fine and be done. And the thing is that I don't know about any other country, but at least in the United States, there's no such distinction. I can form a corporation, and then that corporation is distinct from me. But they think that there is automatically one, and that your name is applied to it. So they use, but it's funny because they use the same name, but they say that they're not them because they think it's in all caps, because on certain documents your corporation name will appear in all caps. They basically read the Uniform Commercial Code, and they take stuff out of that, and which only applies to certain things. So that's where the whole thing about driving comes in, because in the UCC, driving is defined as driving for hire, or for if you're a haulier or something like that. But that has no application whatsoever on state driving laws whatsoever at all. It's really only used in that context, and so there's a lot of words that get reused. Same thing, and they also think that Black's Law Dictionary has legal standing, and it doesn't. Black's Law Dictionary is a useful reference, but it's not in any way a legal document. So they quote things out of that out of turn, but yeah, it's basically just it's part of the usual libertarian shit to avoid any kind of responsibility for their actions.
So over there, it's based on civil law. Did you say, Joe?
Well, the Uniform Commercial Code.
Because over here, I think that's based on the maritime standards.
Right, and see, they think we're also under maritime law, which we're not. They also very often in court will cite British law, which again is not applicable.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, but I think that's the basis on which they cite here is maritime law, which kind of only makes sense if you're out at sea, really.
I guess I just wonder what their actual purpose in doing what they're doing is, because you would think that if they're actual purpose was to somehow demonstrate that the law isn't the law, then they wouldn't just be running around screaming about it. They'd just go and do stuff in order to get in trouble. That way they can just walk out of the courtroom, right?
They do.
But there's so many more of them that don't. They wait for something to happen. They're not out there like proactively breaking the law in order to demonstrate that the law doesn't apply to them.
I think you find a whole chunk of them probably just drive a car without making any efforts to comply with insurance, registration, or licensing requirements.
Yeah.
Based on freedom of movement.
I guess in my head, I'm just likening it to that whole, the whole Christian mindset is a strange liken, I suppose, but that heaven is such an awesome and great place that you will want to be there for all eternity. And if it's that awesome and that great, then how come you're not dying to get in, literally, right? Like, what are you hanging around here on earth for? Like if that's true, what you're saying, you want to live in like the lawless anarchy land of no real government since 18 whatever, then why aren't you out there demonstrating to everybody how the law doesn't exist?
Well, they kind of do, though. When they drive around with no registration and no license, they also generally don't pay their income tax. So that's their way to do that. So they think that those laws don't apply to them, and then they just cry foul when like there was one sovereign citizen that he actually tried to get a law degree, and he got turned down, but and then he tried. It's hilarious. They think the law doesn't apply to them, but then when things don't go their way, they'll sue in court. So I'm like, well, if you don't think that court has any jurisdiction, then why the fuck are you bringing a suit in court against some entity in a court that you don't think has any jurisdiction?
There's also a potential financial incentive as well. There's been a couple of successful cases over here. And it's based on the national insurance or social security number. And when that's issued to you at birth, that actually carries with it a value. And that value is based on the potential total earnings that you could, I'm looking for the word, that you could realize during your lifetime for the country of your birth that issued that social security number. And there have been a couple of people in this country who have successfully managed to sue for what is, air quotes, owed them of that amount based on the proportion of their life that's left.
What were their grounds for that lawsuit? That's curious.
That this money was invested on my behalf and based on a contract that was signed on my behalf that I had no say in.
Yeah, that doesn't work here in the U.S. They try it, but that doesn't ever work.
So tying what Joe said back to Sister Danger's question, they keep complaining that there is no legitimacy in what's happening in our government right now. And if you look at the CPAC talk speakers right now, they are still putting forth the big lie that the election was fraudulent. And so,
which Trump is going to refloat tomorrow.
This sounds a lot like the sovereign citizens thinking that the government is illegitimate. Their base has a lot of overlap. And so that's why we're proposing that CPAC actually stands for Congressman Planning Another Coup.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is, really, when you think about it. And it makes it sad that they didn't impeach him.
Yeah.
Like, really not good. I mean, because it doesn't, wouldn't that effectively mean that, let us say that it goes forth and he does this thing and they start having a political party or whatever, where does him declaring himself the actual president, does that constitute treason?
Yeah,
it's debatable. I mean, if not that, then what does constitute treason?
Right.
What depends then is like who's in power, because we basically have people who are friends with the jurors.
Yeah.
And in no other court do you have it an okay thing for the jurors to be partial. But
Right.
when we're talking about treason and impeachment and all that, when the jurors are Congress, then they are very partial.
I mean, I just wish the fucker would keel over with a stroke or a heart attack already. I mean, he's unhealthy as fuck and he's old. Why is he still here?
Well, on that note, Joe, we could say that CPAC stands for Conservative People Acquiring COVID because they're all anti-maskers.
Yeah.
Except the ones that we see wearing masks on camera.
Yeah, for show, yeah. Until they pan to the crowd and there's just a whole crowd of people not.
Well, because if they were to say break the law, like let's just say they go, so Trump declares himself the actual president or the 19th president or whatever it is that he declares, and then he starts getting all of these people gathered behind him, right? And I guess that one of my concerns is, or one of my thoughts about, does this constitute treason, is because let us say all those people just decide we're not going to do at once, right? Like sorry, what were you calling the sovereign citizens, right? They do things individually. But if you suddenly had, 10,000 people all deciding to do something at once, like they did at the Capitol, but now growing that elsewhere, how isn't that insurrection? I mean, and how do you deal with that? We can't exactly go out and arrest them all, not unless we let out all the pot smokers from prison, but sorry, that was a terrible joke on my part.
And we're not going to arrest them all because a good portion of our law enforcement is in favor and is partial to that side.
Ooh, that's a good point.
I mean, we often forget that law enforcement in general is overwhelmingly batshit insane conservative, like not just conservative, but like reactionary all the way, QAnon level of, reactionary conservative. So you're not going to arrest anybody because everybody who would arrest them is going to be on their side.
I'm going to phrase this as a joke, but it's only because it's the only way I can think of putting it in a grammarly correct way. What do you call 100,000 sovereign citizens gathered in one place? A nation. And the reason I say that is because this seems to be the way that this mindset seems to be going. If there's enough people, enough citizens who are standing with Trump, holding him to be the valid president, then there's arguments to be made around that. Yes, Rob.
Republicus is a fucking idiot.
Oh, you're reading the chat, are you?
No arguments there. Well, see, the thing is actually though, Brian, there would not be an argument for that because basically you're talking about secession, and secession is actually unconstitutional, which is why we already had a war over that. So,
right.
So it would not carry any legal weight, although they could obviously cause a lot of headache if they did it.
Right. But I think, the thing is with politics is if you can make a convincing argument and you have enough people siding with you, that tends to carry the day. I think that's why the effort is being made there.
I don't think there are enough people. I think that's largely an illusion. I think 74 million people were willing to vote for Trump. That doesn't mean that he has 74 million backers. It doesn't, like, even the Capitol insurrection, what we saw was, maybe the support of 100,000 people. There were, 6 or 8 or maybe 10,000 people who were actually there. And I haven't heard any real concrete numbers on that. But of course, those are only the people who had the resources or were able to get the resources to travel to Washington, D.C. on the 6th. So obviously that doesn't represent anyone or everyone, but it does, it represents the truly committed. And in an incident like that, you can assume that, it's between 1 in 10 and 1 in 100 that is, the actual number. So if you've got, 10,000 people who made it there, and you have like the wildest estimate of like only 1 in 100 people arrive in DC who actually support this idea and believe in it, you're talking about, a million and maybe 2 million total people out of 328 million who are fully supportive of this and are, going to go full ham. Now they're noisy, and it's one of the reasons the Republican Party is so willing to bow to them. They're not only noisy, they're also people who have resources and donate a lot. We already know that the Capitol riots had a significant portion of business owners and, some of the lower echelons of like the ultra wealthy who, it's been exaggerated saying that everybody there had tons of resources. Obviously the woman who died, was in significant debt and, was totally imploding under it.
Well, I kind of question that a little bit because, we're a year into a raging global pandemic, and a lot of people's income, in fact, the majority of people's income has been severely hit.
Yeah.
So how much disposable wealth have you got if you can just throw in $1,000 for a round trip to the Capitol?
Well, a lot of those people did that on debt. And that's the story with the woman who died, is that, she was in absurd amounts of debt. Her life was fully collapsing. And in a lot of ways, probably that pushed her to go to the Capitol. That, and this is one of the stories I haven't felt like has been told very well, is that many of the people across the country have been suffering severely under the pandemic and are existing on debt, but how much that desperation pushed a certain percentage of those people to go to the Capitol, thinking that, there's this sort of evangelical belief of like the rapture. In some ways, Trump taking power and making everything better is sort of a rapture type event. We saw the same people when, Harold Camping was promoting the idea of the end of the world in 2011. People who had already very little resources were just shedding all their worldly possessions, getting into tremendous debt, and preparing for this event that would theoretically fix everything for them. And that's what I think a lot of the people at the Capitol felt.
Yeah, I mean, one thing too, I'll also point out that there are a lot of people who voted for Trump in November and then were appalled by what happened on the 6th. Not all of them, certainly. There's still, I think I saw like 40% of Republicans were totally fine with it, but that means the other 60% were like, not so hot. But it's still a lot of people. And the thing is, they can still cause a lot of harm. But and basically, I'm glad that we are prosecuting the people who did it, and that's really important to show that if you do this kind of shit, it will not be tolerated. Like there was way too many, like the people who broke into the Capitol in Michigan back in like last April or May. Very little to nothing happened to them, and that's another thing that emboldened these people, because they said, well, we can just bum rush the Capitol and we can get our way. Because I actually shut down for like 2 days, and so if you clamp down and say no, this will not be tolerated, it tends to discourage most people, not everybody, but it discourages most people.
Yeah, same thing with the Malheur National Wildlife Reserve that was taken over here in Oregon for almost 2 months. that mainly through bungling of Oregon State prosecution, everybody walked from that except for Lavoy Finicum, who literally begged police to shoot him and finally got his wish.
Right.
So
Wow.
I found a picture of the stage that everybody was talking about, looking like not a swastika, I guess.
No, it's another symbol that comes from Nazi uniforms. I know that a lot of people on Twitter are saying that it looks intentional. I find it hard to believe that that's a very deliberate, intentional thing. I think that just looks like the orientation of a stage using the typical, prefabricated stage parts. It's like one way to set up a bunch of square pieces, and I just have trouble believing that there's somebody there like
being
saying,
that intense.
"Wahaha, I have secret."
It's also
intentions.
It's also upside down as well. So.
Well, I mean, not if you're the person walking out onto the stage, though.
Okay, fair
And
point.
arguably, if they're, I mean, I don't know. Who freaking knows? I feel like if I was even to argue that, I'm going down the QAnon hole where it's like, oh, but he said this many words, and the 8th letter of the 8th word is, like.
It's also not a common symbol. It's not something that's in the zeitgeist. And frankly, like, as somebody who pays a lot of attention to white nationalists, they use a lot of symbols that that spread like kind of a virus. Everybody starts using the black sun or whatever it is. The symbols they like are ones that they see tattooed on other people. There's a lot of symbols that existed during World War II that just didn't ever create the same kind of like meme status. And I think this is one of them, is that it's not I have trouble believing that the average non-Nazi conservative is like, oh, I recognize that very obscure uniform symbol.
I don't credit them with having that much esoteric knowledge. I'm sorry. They recognize a cross.
Yeah.
Well, no, believe me, they're familiar with swastikas. I don't.
Well,
I think
a swastika, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, they're not gonna put an actual full blown swastika out there. It's the imagery. You part way. Also, the other thing that also kind of looks like, it reminds me a little bit of the ichthys fish.
Oh yeah, the Jesus fish.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's probably not its official name, but everybody knows what the Jesus fish is, right? I'm surprised, I guess, that they want to use Nazi symbolism, unless, of course, Trump really wants to start the Fourth Reich. But I guess because I think to myself, if I was going to start an insurrection in my own country like America, I'd fly Dixie, Jeebus. I want one that says Cthulhu. I want the Cthulhu fish that has tentacles.
I like my Namaste one. I still haven't put it on my car yet. I think I should wait for the next one.
But I mean, isn't
that
kind of what the Dixie flag has sort of become? Your Dukes of Hazzard generally,
Yeah, and it's the flag that's already associated with insurrection.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Secession. Yeah.
So if I was gonna pick an icon, I guess, to go forth, and maybe that's too obvious or something. Maybe they need something that they can have plausible deniability on.
Well, as Joe said earlier, that war's already been fought.
Well,
yeah, and I don't think that I know, like, I might be in the minority here in thinking that we're not really heading toward another civil war. I think we're looking at something more like a very large and very powerful cult, maybe on the level of even the Mormon Church potentially. But I don't think that I don't think we have the kind of issues that we had in the 1860s that led to a full-blown civil war, where you have two very large sides that are, going and almost, relatively equal in proportion sides. I don't think that there's sort of an equal level here. I think we've got, 2 million hardcore, 1.5 million hardcore, crazy conservatives, and you've got maybe 20, 30 million more conservatives who would be kind of on the fence. And then you have the vast majority of the country that wants things to just go back to normal and live their lives and, don't have necessarily a dog in this fight. And then you've got, a few hardcore leftists like myself. We're even a smaller percentage, honestly. We're, maybe a million across the country.
I mean, I don't think that we'd actually have a full-blown civil war, but I think we could end up with a fairly unpleasant insurgency.
Yeah. The Mormon Church, if they had guns, which isn't a pleasant prospect,
Yeah.
Do you guys have some? So you know how Bush had Dick Cheney, for example, who was really the person kind of the brains behind, the shadow puppet behind the throne, shadow puppeteer behind the throne. Do you know who does that for Trump right now? Because it occurs to me that I don't really think he's doing it, but what if there's somebody that's just using the anger of the populace, the discontent with the government in general, to actually rally them to do this?
Of course.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a variety of people who have played that role, but not in the way that like a Dick Cheney did. I think a variety of people. We've talked before about like having the tiger by the tail. There's a long-standing history of these more right-wing economic libertarian type millionaires and billionaires who have been astroturfing things since, the Reagan era, and for the most part, they felt like they were in control. Yeah, I mean, and you could include Herbert Hoover in that too.
Right.
The people
John Birch Society.
Yeah, and Phyllis Schlafly and a bunch of others who felt like they were kind of in control of the conservative masses, and they were the operators, and they were going to use these, human tools for their own enrichment, and it worked for 40 years. But I think the wheels are coming off, and I don't think anybody has control over Trump. I don't think he has a Dick Cheney. Unlike Bush, who was relatively, malleable, I don't think Trump is very malleable. He's a person with too much ego and, a genuine, full-blown sociopath in a way that, few previous presidents have been.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that part of the reason why Trump got as popular with them as he did is because it probably the only honest thing he's ever said in his life. He basically told these people that, well, you're getting fucked over, and they are getting fucked over. They're just not getting fucked over by the people they've been told. They've been told it's feminists and black people and gay people and trans people and all this kind of shit, and liberals and progressives and all this. And meanwhile, it's the same rich assholes they keep putting back in power. So, that's the thing. And so they've made a lot of cachet, by basically playing off those fears. I mean, I remember as a kid, I'm 52, and I remember as a kid, in the back of Mad Magazine of all things, there was this graphic, this drawing, a comic, and it said like the old days, and showed a whole bunch of white sheep around one black sheep, and then it said, oh, and now today, and it was one white sheep surrounded by black sheep. Of course, black people have never been more than like well, at least in the modern times, they've never been more than like 13% of the population. So that was true in 1975 or so when that was drawn. But they've stoked this thing like, oh, black people have more babies, and you whiteys, you're only having 1.7 kids, and we're going to be outnumbered by darkies, and they're going to take over, and they're going to get revenge for slavery. And they've been beating those drums for a long fucking time. Actually, since at least 1865.
Yeah.
So so there's been this discontent, and I think in the case of Southerners, there has been since the Civil War this idea, this thing like somehow they were, they built a lot. That was the first big lie, is that that somehow they were beset upon and it wasn't their fault, and they were just trying to live in peace, and the poor big evil Northerners beat up on them and did horrible things to them, when meanwhile their whole thing was, we want to keep owning people as property. And so after Civil War was over, they built the first big lie. And so there's a sense of like longing, like, that we lost something. And that's the reason why they get so upset when we tell them to take down the statues and those emblems, the flag and the other emblems, because they think, oh, you're destroying our culture. They've culturally identified with these things now, and now you're taking away my culture. That's how they see it, which is pretty fucked up, because I mean, it would be literally like Germans saying, oh, you're making us take down the swastikas and the extermination camps. How dare you? That's my culture.
Right, having bronze statues of Goebbels in every town square, across rural Germany or something. It would be very similar to that. And, unfortunately, the U.S. has never been particularly keen on making any kind of performative punishment of people of this persuasion. And Germany was very keen on making sure that nobody stayed a Nazi after, the end of World War II. And we simply don't have that, that perspective.
Right.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
So, there you go. To say that the culture war is the reason why Trump won, that's just another way of saying racism, really. I mean, it's basically one class of people or one category of people saying that they don't want to recognize the value of the lives of people in other categories. I mean, that's what the culture war is. It's LGBT people, it's ethnic people, just wanting to live their lives that not dominated by the white Christian males of the country. So
I'd agree with you on that assessment, Rob. I'd call it a class war rather than a race war, because it's only the white-black thing that falls into that category. LGBT, gender discrimination, all those other bigotries, they're not necessarily racism. They're all bigotry, granted. But I'd say it's a class war. And I'd say that feeds into the wealthy versus the wealthless, and that those parameters happen to line up.
well, I want to see what Vegas says, because he's saying it's not, though. It's not that simple. So then, okay, then what is it? Well, like, if it's not that simple, then what is it?
I call it corporatism. When we were off air last week, that was kind of where he and I found some agreement, that it's more of a corporatism issue than anything else.
Well, I think that fits in with what we were talking about, the Sheldon Adelsons and Koch brothers and various other, millionaires or billionaire kind of more libertarian. But I mean, it's weird to call them libertarian, because they clearly want to be the elite and in charge of others. But their marketing says that they're libertarian, and comms or whatever, and their perspective is that the elite should rule the masses, and they'll do that through Machiavellian terms, and some of that is inflaming all the bigotry that is useful as a lever. So it is absolutely the bigotry and the fact that people are susceptible to that bigotry. But it's, like you say, it's in service of this larger agenda of people who want to maintain and grow wealth using those tools. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to. I'm going to be shooting off now because my guts have had it, and yeah, I'm about done. But I'd just like to leave on the point that Marcus brings up in the chat room. It's a simple AF, always has been and will be rich versus poor. And I would say that he's absolutely spot on, because that is a class struggle that has gone on throughout the centuries. It's as old as when we first settled down and we had things that were worth stealing because they were accumulated.
Yeah, there is a class struggle, to be sure. I don't dispute that, but to say it's just a class struggle is to absolutely ignore the history of North America. I'm sorry, but
That wasn't what I was saying, Joe. I was saying it's an extension of that historical thing. What you're seeing in America is kind of unique because it is the only country in the world, and you please forgive me for these terms, but it's the only terms I can think of that strike this point home, where chattel and owners have been forced to live side by side. That has never happened anywhere else in the world.
oh yeah, and that basically explains the entire post Civil War period up till about 1965, where basically because of that, the people in power who till for the large part didn't accept that chattel, as you say, as human beings. Um, they basically did everything in their power to try to prove it to be true by making it impossible for anyone to really get ahead.
Yeah, because after the liberation, there were changes to the penal system, so that instead of having slaves, you had chain gangs, and you now see it. Put that you've got this industrial prison system, industrial legal system that just keeps manufacturing free labor. And on that note, I'm going to bid you all farewell. Thanks,
Take care, Brian.
and
Good
hopefully
night.
I'll
Thanks for
see you.
coming.
Good night.
I'll see you for a bit longer next week. Ciao.
All right.
I mean,
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
that's all right. Vegas is saying that he'd argue that it should be a class war. That there's a significant number of would-be conservative Democrats that are within the GOP because of the nature of their values, and by that, just talking point of like nuclear family and that kind of thing. I don't understand what do you mean by nuclear family? Democrats all are a member of nuclear families. Gay people, trans people are members of nuclear families. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. The whole nuclear family argument for anything has always been a pile of shit. It's a
Well,
pile of nothing.
yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely, Rob. Because basically, when conservatives say it, they basically mean mother, father, 2.2 kids, white Christian,
Right.
straight.
Right. And
And
as you know, and most people know, that is a relatively new phenomenon. I mean,
Yeah,
the old families used to be a husband,
multi-generational.
a few different wives, a number of concubines.
right.
I mean, it's so the whole thing about like mother, father, and kids, that's a new invention.
I kind of feel
So
like they're. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Were you done?
I'm just saying that's not traditional. It isn't a traditional marriage. It's not traditional family. It's just that the conservatives and the Republican Party in this country keep calling it that. Just because they keep saying it doesn't make it true. I mean, it just isn't the reality of what families have traditionally have looked like or been. They're not traditional values. It's a
Well,
fucking scam.
the other thing too is that, and I know one thing I think that CRB is addressing. I think it was on the, it's not there anymore, but there had been on the BLM page a thing that said about, like destroy the nuclear family, which is kind of stupid marketing, and but the thing is that up to that point, that's kind of what the right wing thought about the left to begin with. And it makes me think the same thing when you hear J.K. Rowling and her ridiculous thing. Like somehow, if we acknowledge trans people as they are, that somehow that takes something away from the 99% cis people whose anatomy and biology and gender identity all happen to match. That somehow we're losing something if we acknowledge the 1% or so that where it doesn't work for them. Um,
I
and
mean, but the,
it's the same thing with the nuclear family. Like somehow, if we accept families that are mixed race and same sex, or even like more multiple people in the relationship or whatever, that somehow that takes away, steals from everybody else. I've actually heard back when we were arguing, trying to get marriage equality, I literally heard people say that somehow that if we accepted same-sex marriage, it would diminish straight marriages somehow, and they can
Yeah.
never explain
Well,
Well,
why.
what
I mean,
Brian
I don't
said.
remember that.
I mean, I might actually make the point that they are losing something, and the thing that they're losing is laziness. They're losing their ability to be lazy by just being able to assume a whole a whole bunch of things wrapped up in a single word. That is, like, to the best of my ability to ascertain, the only thing that is being lost by all of that. But I mean, I wanted to say, like, with regards to the whole oh gosh, it was a comment that Vegas made, the class war thing, that I do tend to agree that class war is the biggest thing, but that we're not, all these things aren't mutually exclusive. It's sort of like there's a Maslow's hierarchy of of these things, and class war is at the top of, like, well, maybe the bottom of that, top of that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
the base of it,
Yes,
the
like
supporting structure.
because yes, and then but once money ceases to become a stressful thing, right? When you have a very good economy where most people are making money and happy, now we move to, like, the next level of things that enables people's prejudice, right? That enables them to fight with one another. And so it's not as if the other things that, that Joe and Rob, haha, Boobs McGee, are saying aren't actual, right? It's just that I think they're overshadowed by a class war right now. And if we come into a good economy, then we're going to continue to have all of our racism, that's based on people of color, or all of our racism that's based on people who are transgender or gay or whatever it is. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so Vegas, nobody's projecting anything onto you. You keep saying values, right? You said the difference is values, but you haven't demonstrated any values that are different between different sides of the political aisle. You haven't demonstrated
Yeah.
any kind
Rob.
of difference. Number one, wait, and number
Mhm.
two, Joe, the nuclear family thing, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you're aware of this, but like that's been like expanded upon. It's been explained that it's the no different than it takes a village to raise a child, right?
Sure.
The nuclear family, and saying that everything that a kid needs is within this nuclear family. What you're doing is you're separating your nuclear family from the society around you, and therefore you're living and basically an incomplete life, and you're raising your children are missing out on all kinds of experiences and lessons and things that they would get from the village, because traditionally that's how children were raised, by the village. It's a much more natural way for our young to grow.
Well, and the irony of that is the right wing believes in that too, because they're the ones that want to censor TV. It's funny, they always talk about like free speech, but they're the ones that want to censor TV. So we can't have nudity, we can't have sex on TV. We shouldn't have this on TV. We shouldn't have that on TV, or in magazines and all this kind of stuff. They totally think that we need to watch out for their kids. They just don't want to have that same responsibility in the direction.
Don't even get me started. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I just want to very quickly, I may be misinterpreting this, but I think what Vegas is saying is not that he's making some distinction that these are actual values. I think he's saying that people are responding to the myth that they've been sold. And, maybe that's a distinction that they're not making.
He specifically said that the reason why people voted for Trump is because there is a cultural realignment because of values.
Right, but those values aren't.
Disalignment.
So I'm asking, or de-alignment, I think he said. But I just asked him for examples of values, and he has failed to provide any. He now is just saying that we're projecting Nazi and racist bullshit on him. But I mean, I've asked for examples of these values, and all he has given is family, traditional family. And it's like, okay, but that's not a value that's different between the left and the right.
I don't know if what is in this person's mind. I've never, talked to this person before. But I guess my interpretation is just that what we're really talking about in the culture war is about people have been sold several mythological precepts since the 1940s. And now those mythological precepts are being challenged. And what the culture war really is people who are very glad to have those mythological precepts be demolished versus the people who want to maintain and protect those mythologies.
The American dream.
Yeah.
I feel like if that's what he meant as an example was to say the nuclear family, that can, the only way for that to make sense is for him to have meant by nuclear family, we mean like wife, husband, that are all cis het with 2.5 kids and a car. That's
quite possibly.
Otherwise, that doesn't make sense as an example.
Right. No, typically though, that's what they mean when they say that. I know when I say they, I don't mean to lump Vegas in with the they, but the they is usually the right. To come out with that whole the traditional family or nuclear family. What they mean is cis het mom dad 2.2 kids, and the problem with that is obvious. I mean, it is, I hate using this word, but it's problematic because it excludes a lot of people and basically says that they are less than and not worthy of being part of traditional families.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. I think that I've had a number of conversations with people, until I get frustrated with them, where they'll say, well, would they get angry about so-called wokeness? And they'll say, well, people didn't complain about this way back. And like, well, no, because they didn't have the power to do so. Not just because women, like Me Too, for instance, just because women weren't standing up en masse and saying, hey, stop molesting us, doesn't mean that women were okay with what was going on. They just put up with it because they didn't have any fucking political power. It's the same thing. And as far as race stuff, I mean, black people did stand up in the 50s and 60s, and we were met with dogs and water cannons, and bullets and bombs and flamethrowers, assassinations, and then things kind of chilled. And that's the thing; those assassinations, especially, kind of cooled things off for a while, and then that became the new norm, which was better than the previous norm, but it still wasn't where it needs to be, and it's still not today. That's why when people, they get into the thing, well, I shouldn't have to pay for reparations because I didn't do anything. I'm like, the crime hasn't ended yet. You can't get absolution for shit that you're still doing. It's not like they think it would only have. It's not just for slavery. It's basically theft of wages, theft of opportunity, theft of housing, and so forth and so on, that happened for another 150 years since slavery ended.
really need to go because I'm actually supposed to be doing my actual job, but I'm super happy that my Wi-Fi has been stable enough for me to join this long. This has been great. I'm really happy to see everybody again. You know, my heart goes out to Rob, of course, and I did want to answer Agent of Doubt's question he put on Twitter, or you know, if that's an issue. The whole thing with Oregon potentially separating, you know, or part of Oregon going to Idaho. As a leftist, I kind of think it makes sense.
But Oregon and Idaho are, well, that's not true. Rural Oregon and Idaho might get along. The Portlandia and
Right.
Idaho,
That's the separation. Is they're
okay.
talking about basically East and West Oregon splitting into two states.
Because Idaho
and
is great.
Eastern Oregon joining Idaho, and that kind of makes sense because Idaho's a very conservative state, and so is Eastern Oregon. And you know, like, I'm not for secession. I think it's really important to maintain the union so far as we have it, but states changing their borders around to make more sense. I mean, I have the same feeling about borders all over the world. Borders are kind of nonsense, and you can put them wherever you want. And you know, borders. If borders make people feel good and they make people feel like they're with, you know, their own community, I guess, you know, do what you will with borders. I have no huge problem with it.
I think we need to get rid of the intra-Dakota border. There just should not be 2 Dakotas. There's like 10 people in each state.
Yeah.
The reason that we have state borders, though, right, is because way back in the formation of the United States, there was this whole idea of sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
So if we were actually to consider just getting rid of borders, we would basically have to have kind of another constitutional Congress where we came together and hammered out a unified federal law. And then we could just, because I can't
and I
see
don't
any
think that makes sense. I think, you know, from my perspective, the whole idea of cities, counties, you know, municipalities, states, and federal districts, you know, those levels, and then ultimately maybe continental bodies and things like that. It makes sense to divide societies up that way in order to get anything done. Anyway, I do have to go. I just wanted to say that comment about where I stand on where the Oregon border might be. And have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, he actually lives in Oregon.
Real quick before number one, I want to say I love that Vegas actually came on. I love that Vegas actually came on, because we tell people all the time, you got something to say, you got the link, come on in, and they don't. So that is that's cool as fuck right there. That's number one. Number two, I want to say something to everyone who was involved, and damn it, Jack just left. But to the Breakfast Club, you have no idea. You honestly do not know. When I got to my dad's service and I saw the flowers and it had the card from the Breakfast Club, I got like stupid ugly crying. When I went to my email and there was all of these PayPal notifications that you guys had made donations for his funeral, I got stupid ugly crying. Thank you guys so much. I mean, it's amazing. I did not expect, and you guys didn't have to, and I love you.
We love you, man.
Thank you.
You know I do.
Sympathies, for sure.
I wanted to make note of the fact that we have now survived 1 hour of a woman running the Breakfast Club. It seems to be working so far.
But is YouTube ready for a woman to run the Breakfast Club? I mean, seriously, I always think that's kind of funny. Anytime there's someone's making getting a milestone, it's like, well, is America ready? Like, was America ready for a black president? Was it ready? It's like, fucking just do it. You don't need to be ready. Just fucking, it happens. People exist, and
I don't know about the rest of all you men over there, but there's at least one branch of the military that, like, their motto is improvise, adapt, and overcome, right? So at least those guys I expect can handle it, right? I'm not sure.
Especially in a country that we're so proud of, the ability people have opportunity and all that kind of stuff, and we still haven't had a woman president. And fucking India Pakistan has had a woman president. Fucking Pakistan, Islamic Republic, that's pretty shitty to women overall. They've had a woman president, and we still haven't. That's an embarrassment.
So, sorry, go ahead. You go first. Go.
I just wanted to say, hey, Vegas is here.
Hi. Go ahead, Vegas. Say something.
Yes, please. Actually, I want him to elaborate on his comment about values, just so I am not confused about what he's talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So whether it's real or perceived, right? When I say it's part of the culture war, it goes in line with the terminology, right? Like terms like this kind of academic soft science stuff. They'll say heteronormativity or things like this. Like in the culture war, I don't see anything bad, and I do see the ideal as, mom, dad, kids. I don't see that as a bad thing at all. So I think a lot of people that would interpret the left as, or some of the left at least, to be hostile toward that sort of lifestyle, or at least driven by I don't know how to put it, driven by an angst from how they were brought up, or whatever they were brought up into. Maybe they were Christians or brought up that way, realized it was a lie, got mad, whatever the case is, something along those lines. Yeah.
See, the thing is, though, is that's what I was saying before. People on the right always seem to think that, well, we're, if we don't want to live the way that they want to live, that somehow we're against their way to live. No one's stopping them from doing it. Just like
I know. I know. I'm just telling you what it is.
No, I know what you're saying. But I'm just saying it's just so bizarre because they seem to think that, well, if they can't force the rest of us to live that way, that somehow that's taking something away from them, and it makes no sense.
Well, there's more to it though than that, right? Like when I say the ideal, I'll use the Black community, Joyce here, as an example. Fatherlessness as a statistic for people that are inmates, right? Whether or not that crosses racial boundaries, right? There does seem to be, across whether or not you're in poverty, middle class, there seems to be a difference in outcomes, at least as I understand, when it comes to this sort of thing. Well-adjusted kids, or the desire to have well-adjusted kids and assume that would come from just a traditional family lifestyle doesn't seem that bad. Like I think more people should do it, right?
But here's the thing, though, is that certainly that's a good thing for actually the more parents the better. But the whole thing is, though, is that, see, a lot of times I see conservatives say, well, like the example you said about the Black community. Well, they're assuming because there's fewer marriages that means there's more fatherless children. But when you actually look at the statistics and say, okay, how many children are actually fatherless? Just because two people aren't, there's a couple and the people aren't married, that doesn't mean the child has no father. It just means that the mother and father are not married.
It's a fair point, but it's not indicative of nothing. Right?
Hold on. I feel like saying that traditional marriage, household, or whatever, though, is sort of a misnomer, right? So to have a clarification of terms, when you say traditional marriage / household, you mean man and woman as the most cishet, meaning you don't mean a lesbian couple or a gay couple or anything to that effect, or you mean a man and a woman as we have. So
I don't want to write off those people. It doesn't go into my calculus or anything.
Is that correct though? Is you're meaning a man and a woman? That's all I'm asking. That's correct. When you don't mean that by traditional? when you
No,
use the word traditional?
No, I think that. So I don't know. I think that the
You
kids are
don't know
going to
what you mean.
benefit from a. Well, I
Oh,
think that kids are going to benefit
only
from
asking you
a
to clarify the term.
masculine.
I'm only asking you to clarify the term. When you use it, do you mean man and woman? Or do you, or are you saying that that is what is normally meant is man and woman? That's all I'm asking you.
I think
Because
that is what's most applicable, but I'm not going to deny anybody from adjusting that or anything.
Sure, and
Right.
I'm not
Okay,
trying
so-
to. I'm not trying to capture you. My point that I'm trying to make. My point that I'm trying to make is that
Mhm.
that has only existed for a very short period of time in the expanse of history, and prior to traditional, meaning man and woman, right? Prior to that, there have been many cultures across many different time periods where household was a whole thing. Like it was a whole production, and people still manage to grow up and be well developed. And so what I'm wondering is is it really important that it is man and woman, or is it actually important that there is stability and interaction and a loving environment, like a growth environment for the children? And if so,
So sure, but that kind of lends to that, right? That's sort of the American model that
I
kind of
disagree.
brings that.
Well, okay. Can I? I actually want to address
American
both of you.
belief, yeah.
I kind of want to address both of you if it's okay.
Yeah, but here, let me embiggen you.
Oh, I've been embiggened. Actually, that's Joe. Oh,
I'm
there
always
I am. Yeah.
digging.
Okay, so he did say, Vegas did say, mom, dad, kids, right? And that is usually considered to be the default. And because he said it's kind of the American model. And then he had said when you were asking your question that model lends itself to stability, right? Because you asked, isn't it just about stability? And he says, well, that model lends itself. The problem is that isn't true. There's like studies about this, and there's the statistics and about kids that are raised in households with two moms or two dads, and those kids have better outcomes for in a whole range of different areas, especially in accepting other people, and not having the kind of biases that often we've seen come from um, hetero marriages or the traditional family that people seem to love so much. So it isn't true. Now, if you're talking about single parent homes, yes, the outcomes there are not as good.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, and the biggest is, I think, the lack of stability.
So I didn't get to really complete my point, or when I tried to interject though. So yes, I do view that as the.
Embiggen him, please.
Oh,
please embiggen him. Thank you.
So right, lowercase l libertarian speaking. Yeah, I do default to that because that is, I think, what most of us think of when you think of an American family unit. You're going to think of that unit. Usually it's not multi-generational even. But yeah, when I see, like, as a right-winger, as a conservative, my value structure being kind of oriented on that and how to empower that, because I see that as a good way to have stability. Sometimes doing nothing is okay. And I know you guys are big on Thomas Sowell and some other folks that I consider pretty principled people. Some of the policies that act as safety nets can also, they seem to correlate at least with a breakdown of that durability from the family unit, right? Like less dads, less dependents, like less women dependent upon men for resources, like the whole thing of it. It's just something that is kind of intuitive as a conservative. You're like, because I can't see what's bad about the family, and I detect the suspicion behind it from the left.
but see again, you keep going to that well of well, you can't see what's bad of it. Well, there's no one on the left that I know of that wants to prevent people from living that way if that's what they want. But it's
Okay.
the right wing that tells the left that they have to live that way, and it's so it's the other way around. And so it's like you keep going to that well of like, well, I don't see what's wrong with it. Well, no, neither do I. If people want to live if that's the family they have, see, I accept all families. That's the whole thing. So the cishet, people and the 2.2 kids, whatever, and the lesbian couple and the gay couple and the single mom and the single dad, I accept them all. The other thing too, as far as stability goes, we also do know that a single parent who's loving is a better environment for a child than two people that hate each other and are at each other's throats. Because if you look back in the 40s, 50s, and beyond, when people stayed together because divorce was frowned upon, so what ended up happening is you didn't have a stable environment, you had a hostile environment, and you created very messed up people. So that's not a good environment either. So it's better to have a single, if the choice is a single parent or two people together who don't like each other anymore, the single parent's the better place to be.
Well, yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, of course.
And so that's the thing. So I mean, it's deeper than just the obvious. And as I said, and even in the case where when people look at the marriage versus unmarried couples who are together, there are, at least in the Black community, I know for a fact there's a lot of people where there's two active parents, but they're just not married. They may live together, they may not.
There still the compulsion or the suspicion about having programs that enables people to go on in what we perceive as less than ideal, which is, you're collecting resources from the government, you're kind of enabling behavior that doesn't do anybody any good.
No, but the behavior already exists regardless whether you have those programs or not. It doesn't enable.
That's just where this is more of an explanatory thing. But
right. I was just going to say that the programs exist because the problem exists. The problem doesn't exist because of the programs. It's the other way around.
Right.
Well,
it can, and I'll get to that. But I think that what Vegas mentioned that is to the main point is that he said ideal or less than ideal. And it's not that we're attacking people's ability to have these families. It's we're attacking that being idealized because we're trying to empower the quarter of the children in America that are being raised by a single parent to not be stigmatized. Because in our country, we happen to have the most kids by percentage being raised by single parents, a full 25% of them.
So right. What are the outcomes for those kids compared to kids that come from what I say is ideal? And when I say ideal, I'm not knocking single parents.
No, right. On average, they're not as good. But the problem is by saying that mom, dad, and 2.2 kids is ideal. That's not going to change the situation for single parent households. I mean, there's a plethora of reasons why there's so many kids with a single parent. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and if you don't have some kind of a safety net for those families.
I'm not trying to say that take away.
But I mean, you'll end up with even worse outcomes, is what I'm saying. You'll end up with even worse outcomes. And I think that there is a certain amount of, and I know for a fact, I just know that there are I wanted to say men, but it can't be all men. Like it can't be only men, I should say. I'm sure there's women too, but I know that it has to exist, that there are some guys out there that might get somebody knocked up and be like, I don't have to worry about this because she can rely on the state. I'm out. And if that's what you mean by enabling, I guess there's a certain amount of it, but I don't think it's as much as some conservatives might think. I think that's a much smaller percentage.
How many people these days, especially blacks, don't have dads at the moment. I don't want to make it sound mean, but
Right.
it's
No,
a
but there's a
thing,
lot of
right?
reasons for that. There's
That
a
is
lot of
the largest
reasons.
demographic for that. If
Yeah,
I'm
it
like,
is.
that is an actual fact.
It's a
but
thing. And when I
but-
look at it, it's just like look, I just relate it to my dad, right? I was a shithead, and he put a boot in my ass. Okay, like I don't want to. I feel like the dad thing is kind of underappreciated as to the impact, or not. It doesn't have to be a dad, but this masculine archetype thing for men, for young men, it seems important. Like it just does.
If I can just not understate the impact, I wish that your dad had some better parenting skills than putting a boot to you, because that's
It was a figure of speech. He didn't actually put the boot in my ass. So, you know.
Man, I got a belt when I was a kid. I got a belt. I got a spoon,
The
stick,
buckle.
a hand. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
belt buckle.
my dad
So-
whooped my ass one time for kicking my brother in the balls. So
So I think that's so. Like, what makes me a conservative? It's this sort of thing, right? It's that it's a kid's thing. I just see it. I think that this stuff is important, and
Right, but see, basically the conservative method to deal with the issue is punitive, and actually creates worse outcomes. That's what we're trying to get at. Is that so? Basically, by denying people the resources, plus, you brought up a couple times about the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
See, to look at without looking at the reasons for instance, wealth disparity for one, housing disparity, job disparity, a whole bunch of other things that are based outside of culture, or at least not within the culture. Then you end up again doing the other way around and saying, okay, you're looking at the wrong cause and effect. So that one of the things too you said is that about and you said it very quickly, so I'm gonna try to say it as accurate as I can. And so I'm sorry if I get it wrong, but effectively something to the effect that part of this thing you're concerned about is that the programs reduce or diminish the dependency of women on men. And I'm like, well, good, because everyone should be, as independent as possible. I don't think one person being dependent on another, a specific person is a good thing. I think that basically turns women into just a step above chattel. I don't think that's good for society either.
I don't think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I know you want to respond to Joe, and I want you to respond to Joe.
hold up a hand so that I know. Hold up, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
I do want to say though that on the panel, I believe I don't know about you, Viggs. I don't know about anything about your life, but for everybody else, I'm the only parent that's on this panel. I've got four kids. The youngest is 5 months old. The oldest is almost 27. And he just bought a house. Anyway, so
soccer dad.
What happened?
Vegas is a soccer dad.
Oh yeah, I'm a parent of 2.
There you go. So okay. So yeah, you and I are the only parents on the panel then. Also, I don't work. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I change diapers and I make baby food and I sing nursery rhymes and do naps and all that kind of stuff and read books, and that's my job. Peach,
pretty awesome job.
It's tiring. It's a lot of work. But I do love it, and it's very rewarding. Peach, my girlfriend, not my wife, she works. And she does the whole, I would say 9 to 5, but it's almost more like an 8 to 7 kind of a thing. But she does all right, I mean, I can raise the kids, and we don't have to hire somebody, so she does okay. So anyway, and we have a functioning, fairly normal,
That's good.
family and household. It's just that the major traditional roles are reversed.
That's fine.
Can I ask a question?
I mean, I don't have a problem with any of that stuff.
Can I ask a question of Vegas?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things you said, I just kind of want to rewind just a second because I think I heard this. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard you say that one of the things that you think is valuable in the traditional format is the male influence in the household. Did I hear that correctly? Is the male influence in the household for the children, especially male children?
I wouldn't care. No, I would think that a masculine role model is important for men that are raised in a household, especially.
I guess I'm just really thinking about what it is that you're saying with regards to how you seem to perceive. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to perceive how the left perceives this whole traditional thing. And
it seems like nothing here within the rubric like what Rob's got going on. Like I'm open to deviating to, like, that's all fine, but I'm saying it does end up to be way too wishy-washy, and to suggest or like that I would offend that. No, I don't think women are ideal to raise men. Like, I'm sorry, I do believe that's true. I think that they're going to have a hard time understanding teenage boys, and I don't think the flip-flop is good either.
Yeah,
so ideally you'd have.
I want to interject here because there's something that, I mean, I don't know firsthand, but I'm aware of anyway, is that when you're talking about outcomes and parents, the couples that do the best with child are two lesbians. So there's no men in the house. Yeah,
but that could be the same thing though, because you're going to have a masculine archetype probably.
Not always. Not always. There's a thing called lipstick lesbian, and I know that might not be a very PC term to use these days, but often there's like two of the very femme type women together in a relationship with children. So there's not always a masculine figure in the household.
Right.
Okay. Well, I don't think
it's a common misconception.
These are still edge cases, guys. Like I'm not meaning to diminish it, like that they don't exist at all, but I am saying that there is a broad base here. Okay,
right, so
it does exist.
Well, my original point that I kind of wanted to drive at with the questions that I was asking you is that is it really important that the influence, the masculine and feminine influence, comes in the form of traditional family? If the real thing that is important is that there are examples or those influences that exist, could it be possible that those influences are presented to the child, or the child is exposed to them via a community? Do they have to really be like mom, dad that are married to each other in the most classic American sense that we know? Or are we really looking just to have that knowledge, that example, somebody to maybe relate to there and present? Because if it's a latter, then why is anybody worried about what form those things come in, so long as they're there?
I don't think I have. First of all, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it.
Both conservative and liberal, right? That would apply to everybody.
I suspect that there's not an issue with it. Multi-generational things have existed for a very long time, right? And I suspect that there's no issue with it at all.
Oh, and to give you a personal example, my mother was not, emotionally and mentally capable of being a mother when I was young. So I went to live with my grandmother and my step-grandfather. So during my formative years, to say from 1 to 20, my grandmother was between 50 and 70, and my step-grandfather was 20 years her senior. So and he was basically reactive, and he was not a positive role model in any way, shape, or form. So my male influences were teachers mostly. And a few other.
It shows you're a smart dude.
Right. So I am. I'm probably one of the smartest people you know.
Thank him. Joe, thank him. Thank him.
Humble.
He paid you a compliment. Thank him.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. But it's true. I mean, what he said is true. Thank you. And what I said is true. And that's not a knock at him. That's just, fact. But I'm also one of the smartest people. The rest of the people on the panel know, and the people in the audience know. That's just a fact. But the thing about it is that in spite of not having a stable father figure in the home, I've done quite well for myself. I'm, an engineer. I got a business, and that's growing, and I do better than most people. In spite of actually a fairly dysfunctional family, quite honestly. But here I am.
But do you not feel, pardon the expression, but blessed in any way? Do you have any idea how exceptional that is to come out in your circumstances the way that you came out? It's very unlikely. It really is not that. It's unlikely for you to have become who you are.
It's
right?
Not as unlikely as you think. Now, again, being smarter than the average bear certainly helped. But I forget, it was Ray Kroc that talked about unrequited genius is it's like the stuff of literature that happens so often. So
Ray Kroc, but wait, Ray Kroc was a piece of shit though.
Well, he was, but he was extremely successful piece of shit. And that's why Ray Kroc, the guy
who stole McDonald's.
Right, exactly. The guy who stole McDonald's. And turned
from the McDonald's brothers, those poor guys.
That's right.
Now I know who you're talking about.
Yep. He turned it into the multinational conglomerate that it is today. So that's the thing, though. He has cachet on the right because he's a successful business guy. So of course he's a job creator, right?
So hearing the situation where there's less than two parents in the household, when you have a single parent, that's less than ideal. When I hear that, what I think about is how there have been conservative policies that have created that in practice. When I was in Milwaukee, I did a deep dive on this as to what sort of social services had what impact on people. And we had the WIC program where it didn't matter what your income was. Women, infants, and children, it was a public health initiative to get this good food into every kid so that they would grow up healthy.
I thought WIC was for lower income folks, no?
No, WIC is for every kid, women, infants, and children. Does not matter what your income level is, right? So then there were other programs that were tied to income. And it's kind of like how we see right now, there's the more progressive liberal idea of give everyone a check. And then there's the conservative reining it in of no, let's put a cap on this. If you make over a certain amount, you don't need a check, right? That cap
reverse
right, 78,000, right? What happens when you have a world where you can't raise kids unless you're making six figures right now here in Denver? Unless you have two incomes that are around 50, if you have those two incomes and you have enough to raise your kid, then you're not going to get that check because you make over that 78,000, right? You're basically it's impossible to get that check. In Milwaukee, when I lived there, this is over a decade ago, but we had people who were basically just under the cap for being able to get assistance. We're talking TANF, food stamps, the whole works, rental assistance. And if they were to report that they had a man living with them, they would have to add that income to their household. So, some of the statistics are skewed because the man's living there anyway, and they're just hiding it whenever the social worker comes. But sometimes it's actually the policies that are put in place to cap people's ability to get the assistance at a certain income that creates the single parent family in the first place.
Well, and yeah, I'll go one step further. I got two examples. So now it's changed a little bit, but getting out, if you're getting welfare or most public assistance, because there are these caps, and up until with the last decade or so, most of them did not have sliding scale. A lot of them still don't. So what ends up happening is, we say, oh, well, people are on these things should be temporary and they should work their way off of it. Well, the problem is that the amount of money they're getting is well below the poverty line. They're struggling to make ends meet. If they work and make too much money, they don't lose part of the benefit. They lose all of it. So they may not be able to make so the loss of the benefit. They may not be able to make that up in what they work, or they're just barely struggling. So what ends up happening is actually an incentive for people not to get ahead. My Aunt Ruth, my white Aunt Ruth was on welfare when I was a kid, and basically, if you saved money, then that showed that you didn't need so much, and they would cut back. So how are you ever going to work your way off welfare if you can't save money to go to school or take a training class or do anything, to further yourself? One last example is abortion. The right wing generally doesn't like abortion, but what we notice is that when right wingers are in control, abortions go up because the rest of right wing policies create economic circumstances where more women want to have abortions. So even though the left is more permissible in having abortions, they do other things that make it less likely that a woman will want an abortion in the first place.
Okay. And then Vegas.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, like Peach and I talked about getting married. We can't get married. We're in a situation where we can't get married because if we get married, I will lose my health care. And she would have to end up paying for my HIV medication, and that would break us, and we would lose our home, and we would lose everything.
And Rob would die.
I would die because I am on state health care.
That makes me so angry just to hear.
It's ridiculous. And also, I mean, if I were to get a job, I mean, now with the munchkins, they're tiny yet, so it's not something I'm worried about now. But I mean, eventually, I'm gonna want to get back into the workforce, but I got to be careful I don't make too much money because again, it's the same thing. I would lose my health care. So
Jack is attesting to exactly what I was saying that happened in his family as well. Dad didn't have the ability to live there officially, had to be their secret.
Right. So that actually breaks families up and makes things more difficult.
Or skews statistics.
Right, that too.
My turn.
That's the thing that I think is very upsetting. Again,
Wait, no. There was an order of people talking here.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see it.
So one of the things, like I am amenable to probably more than I think, and I think there's a lot of conservatives that are. What do you think about UBI as like it wouldn't come free in terms of as a concept, maybe consolidating some of these benefits and addressing it through a UBI type system through direct payments? It's a question.
Anyone? I mean, I have thoughts on that.
I guess I would say as a replacement for other systems, I think it'd probably be a good idea. I'm still not sold on the idea of everybody getting a check. I don't need a check. I don't want a check. But I think that, there should be below a certain threshold, you should get the check. And then between threshold A and threshold B, there should be a sliding scale. But yeah, it actually go, it's funny because it would actually be more like conservative things, at least the way that it used to be. In the 90s, a lot of conservatives wanted like block grants and very simplistic systems. Well, right. If you don't have as much overhead, if you don't have as much means testing, if you don't have as much paperwork, and it's just like, you're below this threshold, you get it, that would actually cost less money and it would probably help more people.
Right. It's a new concept for me. Listening to Andrew Yang back in this last primary for your guys's, he made reference to Milton Friedman, and I went and looked it up, and I actually only recently really started digging into it. And it's not like in principle, I don't want you to get me wrong, that I'm like in principle for this idea, but in this, with what we have going on, it does seem to be the more efficient maybe more practical solution overall is to address these things through some kind of UBI. And giving it to everybody is probably, it's good. It's less overhead, it's less admin. There's also less stigma, right? So it's something that I would listen. I would hear arguments for sure.
Well, so I'm kind of on board with the UBI idea. If for no other reason than I don't think it's actually possible for us to go forward in a productive manner as a society without it. I actually think that the people must have some manner of their own survival in order for us to progress kind of to a next level. But really, also in conjunction with that, don't we say often, that there should be some kind of obligation to, the poorest, we're no better than the poorest amongst us, right? And considering the wealth that we have as a nation, why do we not have some manner of UBI that literally raises the floor for the poorest amongst us? We kind of see some of those things being done where in places where they're building tiny houses for, people to live in that are homeless people, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess I feel that, like, in combination with other things in the economy, like the automation of various things as computers become more smart and we get more smart tech, and basically what you need to have are some level of workers that watch things, that man machinery, right?
Right. Yeah.
If we go to a society where there are more unemployed people, you cannot just have a country of people living with no money. They must have some kind of income, and that income would be the UBI, right?
Right, like race to the robots kind of stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
but at which point, what will happen?
Sorry,
no, it's okay. What I think will happen is that that we will eventually, it will become a sign of prestige that you have a job, because it means that you have more than what UBI provides, right? So go ahead. I'm gonna first Rob, then Sirius, and then Agent. Okay.
So I'm eating M&Ms, and I like them. So
I hate chocolate.
Okay. What I really wanted to say was that everything that you guys have said, that's all true. But also, just in general, healthy economies are built from the bottom up. Like there's the conservative whole trickle down thing that they've been trying now for 40 years. They've been trying this, and it doesn't work. It trickles so far, and then it stops. Because anybody with enough power has an umbrella. So, I mean, it's only going to go so far. So healthy economies are built from the bottom up. So when you give everybody a check, people who have like needs that are difficult for them to meet before the checks are going to begin meeting those needs. And that means they're spending that money. And hopefully eventually they start saving it once they meet their needs. And that would be really great. But at the beginning, it would be like rocket fuel to the economy. So,
yeah, I would say two things. One, as the one and only automation specialist on the panel, we are so far away from that point of automation taking away all the jobs. We got a long way to go. Believe me, I'm working on it. But the thing is that but again, as I said before, it creates new jobs. The thing is that it's going to require a more educated populace than we currently have. So that's another reason why then, in addition to anything else we do, we have to bolster our teaching, across the board, and not exclusively to STEM, but we definitely need to do a better job than we are currently with STEM. And that doesn't necessarily mean more money, but we got to do a better job than with how we're training. But to what Rob said, though, again, as a business owner, there's a whole idea of tax cuts creating jobs is a complete farce. If just say you cut my taxes in half tomorrow, I'm not going to hire any more people, because I don't hire people because I have more money. I hire people because I have more demand from the consumer. So if the more people need my services, then I would hire more people. And actually, right now I'm actually in a hiring phase, irrespective of what taxes do. lowering taxes might increase a few jobs at the margin, but it's literally at the margin. The impact, the economic, stimulus impact of tax cuts like that, unless you're in a point where the tax rates are ridiculously high, and we're nowhere near that, is not going to have the impact that conservatives think. And it keeps being shown to not to be the case, and they keep trying to do it. Like Kansas is the most recent obvious example. They went full trickle down, and the state's economy nearly collapsed. The economy is built on the back of small business, and it comes from the bottom up. That's where consumer-based economy, and when the consumers have money, the economy thrives.
Can I?
There was
can I respond to that?
A direct response.
Go ahead.
So, when you're talking about taxes, are you talking about like your income taxes that you're taking out of your LLC or your company, or are you talking about your corporate revenue, your taxes?
All of everything that my company has to pay in taxes.
So that doesn't comport with the whole Norwegian model, right? I mean,
Define.
That's more laissez-faire than here, and so I always hear over and over again that these folks want all of the perks and benefits of living in some Scandinavian country without recognizing how their corporate structure actually works. It's very different than here. So it kind of works for them, and it does kind of have a difference. It does seem to have a difference, right? More people employed.
Well, the thing is, though, they also have, I'm just looking here, they also have a progressive tax rate. So it starts very small at the bottom, and
Sure.
At the top, it's lower overall rate than here. But see, that's not counting. See, their Social Security rate is 8.2. So actually, they're paying 24.2% taxes overall if you're at the upper end. And basically, like, you remember Mitt Romney a few years back, it was being found out that he was only paying like 14%. So then the people who are at the upper end would probably be paying a lot more taxes than they are now. And this is how we
in income, right? Like, as in payments that they're getting in their paychecks, right?
Because the thing is that we have so many, there's so many benefits that you can do to shed your tax burden if you're making a lot of money that you don't really get at the low end. So
yeah, so the big confusion in this country is people think that I understand. I am for a progressive tax scale, but that people get confused that that's how the wealthy actually make money. They don't make money that way, right? They make it through capital gains, a lot of them. And so the thing is, like, if I sell real estate or other assets, I'm taxed at a lesser rate than your labor. I think that the fact that this isn't like a steaming issue on the left has always been kind of weird to me, because because I'm in the camp that, well, it ought to be at least the highest bracket of income.
Oh yeah,
or
absolutely.
Exceed it, right?
Yeah.
And yet it's like, and I'm a right winger.
Well,
so I like what?
Well, it actually has been. The whole thing with the capital gains has been a Democratic issue. They don't push it as much as they used to, but
clearly
it absolutely has been a Democratic issue, and it's going to be one of my issues for a long time. It makes no sense that, okay, because I'm if things go well, I'll be retired in 5 years. It makes no sense that the income I'll get off of my savings, that I'll pay a lower tax rate than you who work in a job. That's perverse.
That's what it is. That's what it is right now.
Yeah, exactly, and that needs to change. But again, the Democrats, the last time the capital gains rate changed, it was under George W. Bush, and it was reduced. But and it's actually kind of really messed up, because there's a 10% rate, but only people with lots of money get the 10% rate. So you and I don't even get the 15%. We're still paying 15% on the capital gains, unless you have enough money, which was bizarre.
No, yeah, and I'm not there. No, sorry,
No,
go ahead.
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't think anybody in the panel is. But so but that's the thing though. This
Let AOD speak.
Sure.
It's okay that I'm the enlarged one and I'm not the one speaking. All us men look alike anyway, right?
I was looking at the screen.
I mean, actually,
You're embiggened.
So just to make the actual libertarian argument here, we have no liberty when we have wage slavery. The American dream should not be to take out a student loan, to be in debt to pay money to a bank, then get a job where you're paying on that debt, but then also get a mortgage so that you can pay interest to a bank, and then be a consumer where you use a credit card so that you can pay interest to a bank. That should not be us, right?
That seems pretty dishonest.
seems like there shouldn't be anybody, to be perfectly honest.
The right to contract, right, is where that comes from. The right to agree upon.
I'm not the right person to make this argument, but I'm saying it seems like a lot of what is idealized here in America is pay interest to bank, with everything that we're supposed to be doing.
Well, yeah, look, it's an issue.
If we had,
but the thing is,
made it so that we had a basic amount of money where we could actually afford our rent, we wouldn't have to pick a job that we didn't want. We would have more freedom to work the jobs that we actually wanted to be working in. If you can't save up enough money to pay the deposit on your next apartment, you are stuck in the situation that you are in. And if we're being paid slavery wages, that's where we're all right now. We're all stuck where we don't want to be.
I
kind of like that.
I don't think everybody's in that category, but also I don't think you'd want a world without the kind of credit that we have, the access to credit.
Well, I think
it's an enabler as much as it is all the issues that you speak of. It does allow for a lot of growth, right?
Well, so here's the thing, though. Like, I mean, what I am hearing is being argued is that basically there's no difference between slavery where you're not being paid and slavery where you're being paid, but you're still stuck financially wherever you are because of all of these other things. I mean, do they not amount to the same effect at the end? It doesn't matter that you're being paid $5 an hour. You're still stuck where you live. You cannot move. You have no upward mobility, right? Does it matter if you're being paid nothing or if you're being paid so little compared to what is required by like the economy and society that you're in, that it may as well be nothing?
Well, also,
yeah, that would assume that there is no upward mobility and nobody is moving up.
Right, but if you pay people just enough so that you can say they're being paid, but they're still stuck where they are, right? Like the effect you're still achieving is they're still fucking stuck. I mean,
sorry, I keep butting in. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. So I would say two things. One, there is not as much mobility as you might think, and that's part of the problem. Is that we have this American dream that you can be so upwardly mobile. The reality is that very few people are mobile, and that's why I would say. And so the idea, like what Mike's talking about, would actually make more people mobile. Secondly, I don't think Mike was arguing that we shouldn't be able to get credit. He's kind of arguing that we shouldn't have to, at least not so often or so much.
I mean, I kind of agree with
I actually live a life where I've benefited from something that's like universal health care, and that I have VA health care, right? I don't have to pay for it, which actually gave me more freedom to be able to choose jobs that pay me better as a contractor than jobs that would give me health care. Having my health care attached to my job is just one more layer of that wage slavery, where there are people who cannot make the same decisions that I make to work a different job that they actually want to work because they're stuck in that job. If people were not stuck in that job, if people could actually afford basic living without having to, keep stuck to that job, then they might actually work the jobs that they want to work.
Yeah, and also, to that same regard, and I've mentioned this before, as a small business owner, as a practical matter, because people need healthcare and they don't get it from a single payer system. So people generally, most of my employees are on our company healthcare plan. I have to offer it in order to compete with my larger competitors, but it costs me more because I'm a smaller business with a smaller group. So I'm at a competitive disadvantage. And then I also have to devote time to making sure that I follow the rules. So there's an added regulatory burden upon me, and I'm a small company. So that's, again, it's a bigger burden on a small company like mine than my larger competitors. But if we had a single payer system where I could just pay a damn tax bill and be out of the equation, that would be so much better for me and my employees.
And I know that we're conflating the UBI with universal health care and a lot of other liberal issues, but there's an intersection with all of the liberal issues and all of the conservative stances on these issues. If you gave people universal health care, they would be less tied to their jobs.
What is the fear that is behind that on really the conservative side? Like, why? I don't know. I guess I feel like every time I see people talking about freeloaders, I wonder, in what are their personal lives like? Like, what do they think is going to happen?
So I mean, there are countries, other countries that have some of these systems and some of these programs and policies in place, and they don't have the problems that a lot of, I'm not going to say like the entire right, but a lot of people on the right claim that we would end up having if we had these things. So I have to wonder, are they unaware of the success that these things see elsewhere? Or do they think that Americans, as people, are a different breed and would just say, fuck it, I'm just not going to do anything because, daddy government's going to take
Or
care of
are
it.
they angry that if somebody else gets money in a UBI fashion, that it somehow devalues the harder life they perceive that they
Yeah,
have?
I suppose that could be a third option, I guess. Yeah, sure. I mean, but
Jeez, if
what
only
is it that they
there
would?
was someone around we could ask. What do they think? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, any ideas, Vegas?
I think
Well,
that
I wasn't going to assign a position to you.
So yeah, it's because we're different, right? So I want to use the Norway example because you guys like Norway. You want to be Norway. Okay, so let's be Norway. So what does that mean? So, right, it means that we start fracking. It means that we start digging and we start selling and we start buying assets and we start investments. We take a huge number. Well, we have to create a state we have to effectively act like a state enterprise. If you want to be Norway, okay, we need to become a state enterprise. That means me and Mike in Colorado, right, and Paul or whoever it is. That means in all 4 districts or 3 districts where they said, oh no, because we're going to have earthquakes. Fuck that. Get that shit out of the ground and let's sell that shit so we can start investing and create our Colorado Sovereignty Fund. And then once we just cap that out, we wait 40 or 50 years, we can start siphoning off that fund and subsidizing all these programs that you want, right? So if you want to make these moves and you want to make that kind of stuff possible, we can have that conversation. But I don't think you want to.
I'll have the conversation.
Yeah, I'm like, why not? Point.
Because 2 things, Micah. Because first of all, you mentioned Norway again. Well, this is another reason why the Norwegian tax rates are what they are, and not higher than they are, because they have nationalized their petroleum industry and they collect revenue from that. So then they're effectively taxing their oil industry, and that they're using the benefits toward their people.
It's the only like real nationalized oil industry or company.
Right, but see that's the whole thing. So it's offsetting. Actually, if you look in Alaska, because of oil revenue, Alaska actually gives money back to their citizens. So because they have ready oil.
Okay, so So, Pick, I'll be on your side. If you guys want to go with a nationalized export of actual real resources, if you do, though, right, I can talk that. We can do that. We can actually help out, like ease the burden on some of these things that you want if you're willing to actually do it. But you can't be, the world's going to end in 12 years and this at the same time, right? Well, Norway and crew give all of Western Europe like 40 million, like it's an insane amount of oil, right? The idea that how they take that and invest it and work that into their economy, it's like, oh no, it works just because they have a progressive tax rate. It's not that. Right.
But see here,
there's a lot more to it.
Right, there is, but here's the part that you're skipping. So they've nationalized our oil industry and they can frack and all that, but the difference is here when we frack, conservative politicians want to remove all the environmental and geological restrictions upon them. And I'm okay with fracking if we do it safely and if we do it cleanly as possible. But that's not what the right wing has demonstrated so far. That basically they want them to be able to do all this shit with no obligations whatsoever and none of the consequences, and basically put the burden of the consequences on the taxpayer when you have fire coming out of your tap. So this is the thing where I get frustrated with you, because you're saying we're not looking at the whole thing. You're not looking at the whole thing, because if you want to look,
no, you're not looking at the whole thing.
What they're
this
doing,
whole court is out of order.
what they're includes a bunch of things that we would also want to do as part of that whole package. So you can have fracking if you make sure you're seismically okay. You can have fracking if you make sure dump the waste into rivers and poison the rivers, or you don't burrow into the aquifer and poison the aquifer. Because I would bet you that Norway regulates the hell out of their industry.
I don't think that fracking is as much of I guess something that's going to make me aversive to wanting other things, because I actually see fossil fuel expenditures as leading towards all of the other renewable energy resources. The way that we build those things quicker is to use fossil fuels in the construction of them. The more that we use fossil fuels, we're going to head into all of those other more renewable things anyway. It's kind of like that technological singularity that you also might be discounting of us thinking that at one point there's going to be scarce jobs because it'll all be automated away. I also feel like
you got some time before that.
Yeah, there's a ramp up in technology that using the horsepower that comes out of every drop of oil, it's just going to build a technology that's not going to need that oil. We're going to head in that direction. I think that we might actually hit that technology before we get rid of all of our oil under the power of oil.
Dang, I never really thought about that, but what a way to undermine the oil industry is to basically just build megacities that don't require people to drive anywhere and fuck their sales until they literally have no more profit for. Whoa!
I believe
right now.
I believe most oil actually is used for home heat. I could be wrong, but I believe that's
petroleum, though, like petrol that you put in your car, though, right? That's not the same.
It's used for a lot of shit. A lot. I mean, the automation is
that's a real question.
decades away, but I would like to at least go through the calculus and have something in place and understood before then, right? Because this isn't going to work, right? This model is not going to work. It can't just be a race to the robots, is what I'm saying.
You can only do that to a certain extent, though. You can only calculate to a certain extent, because we're people and we can't account for everything. So you must pick a spot and then just go for it and then adjust after the fact.
So income inequality, if seen as something that affects both sides of the aisle, you could use as a lens to explain away both the Black Lives Matter protests and the Capitol riots. we spoke before about how some of the people at the Capitol riots were in debt and crushing debt, and that was one of the reasons why they showed up, but they were politically active. Same thing with the Black Lives Matter protests. They are under an oppressive amount of debt, and they don't see a way out of it, and they see income inequality. The disparity just keeps on increasing, and the more that disparity increases, the more civil unrest we're going to have.
Well, and that's the thing that's been kind of scary about how things have been, not just here, but even in Europe over the last 10 years, but especially here, because when you look at the broad economy has around the world has been largely good, but we've seen this rise.
There's like chicks everywhere that you can just sell.
Right, but there's been this rise of right wing and left wing activism, and also worse, and at a time of that should be of relative prosperity, but it is that income inequality is driving the problem, because there's a lot of people who are doing very well and a lot of people are doing really, really badly. The other thing too is that one thing I also will point out, my friend Pete, who's actually a conservative guy, but he points out that the reason why Roosevelt went for like socialism light back in the 30s was actually to stave off communism, and say, hey, if we deal with the income inequality to some degree, people will be less militant. Because if there was, at that time, there was a lot of, you look at what happened in Russia and China and all this kind of stuff. The stuff was sweeping the globe, and it was a way to stave it off. So I always tell people that are on the right wing that don't want to, do some of these things. It's like, well, if you don't go for a reasonable solution now, the unreasonable solution will get imposed on you later. And I'm not for that. I don't want that to happen, but that is what's going to happen if we don't fix the income inequality.
I'm a right winger. I disagree. I don't think it. I'm not.
I mean, we're seeing it already. I mean, we're already seeing it.
Okay, so when you say you're a right winger, can I just ask you to?
I'm not actually that right wing.
I just want you to self-define.
Compared to you folks.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I just want you to self-define. Like, what do you think you mean when you say right wing?
So, right, we're not a monolith, right? So I'm a social conservative, and small L libertarian as it pertains to family matters and that sort of thing. And I'm pretty moderate. I'm not against some safety nets and helping people out and making sure they survive and all the rest of it. I'm pretty run-of-the-mill, boring Republican. How about that?
I'm kind of a
or I
socialist.
was anyway.
I'm kind of a socialist libertarian. Where and we've talked about this before. I don't know if you were in the chat when we were talking about this a few weeks back, but like me personally, I just believe like there's a lot of things, family type stuff, my home. It's none of the business of the government. They can keep their goddamn hands and eyes and everything off of it.
Sure.
On the other hand, I also believe that there are things that only the government can and should do. There are some problems that can only be solved by government.
The reason that I ask is because I've seen you so often in the comments, and now you're actually here on the show. And I guess that I just don't find you overall that contrary in the things that you say. I mean,
well, this is kind of the thing, right? So I don't think I represent the minority. I think we're a lot closer than most left-wingers' rhetoric suggests. Usually.
Well, and that right-wing rhetoric suggests, which is like the both is what I'm trying to say. And I guess that's why I ask you to self-define, because I'm like, it sort of just is making me irritated with the whole notion of left and right now to begin with. Like, maybe
so,
just need to be dispensed with.
It's hard to talk about without we're putting on a tinfoil hat, because I think most of this is manufactured. I think we're different. We're never going to see eye to eye on some things.
Nobody will.
But
nobody will
but
see
I don't.
anything. Like,
But I think much of the animus that's going on, like they'll take something legitimate, like Black Lives Matter. The animus surrounding some of these movements, flinging one direction or backwards, is kind of created a rift. Pretty big rift.
Well, yeah, and that's all something I'll step on that, because, when people who got upset about BLM and said about the marches, and obviously there was some violence and that wasn't good, but my thing is, well, when we did peaceful stuff, either nothing happened or that was met with hostility too. Kaepernick did his protest, and people got angry, people got hostile. Oh, you're attacking my flag, you're attacking my troops, and all other manner of bullshit. And it's like, well, if a peaceful protest is not acceptable, then again, as I was talking about before, if the reasonable solution is deemed unacceptable, the more extreme solution ends up winning out.
Yeah, but that doesn't justify it.
No, I'm just making predictions that's what results. If you don't allow people if you don't allow reasonable solutions, then the extreme solutions get imposed upon you. And again, I'm not saying that's good. I'm not promoting that. But I'm just saying that's the fact of history. That's what happens.
So the Hill had a survey. What's that show in the morning? The Sager, and what's that girl's name? Oh, sorry.
Let Rob speak real quick.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that most of us are pretty close. What ends up happening is figures in the media, depending on who you're following, as far as your talk radio or your evening news, they'll take something like Kaepernick kneeling, and they'll immediately run with it to the extreme. And people who don't pay really close attention, the average rank and file, will now walk away with an idea that something happened that didn't really happen. And when you try to tell them that that's not what they believe the case isn't really true, well, they're going to trust their trusted news source that they watch every night in their living room before they trust you.
So did that happen before or after Ferguson? I can't remember when Kaepernick kneeled.
It was, I think, slightly after.
It was right after,
Just
I think, yeah.
Slightly after, right? So that's the thing, because I was hoping that was the case, because I didn't want to be wrong about this, but you can't take it in a vacuum, right? Kaepernick's kneeling. First of all, before you even know what he's kneeling for, to an angry vet like myself, that's, the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing that? I mean, without understanding what he's doing, right? You maybe figure it out a day later or whatever. Yeah, it does look like a shitty thing to do.
Right.
But that's the point. He had to be controversial. I get it. But the Ferguson, right? Well, here's something for you. What was the cop's name? Darren Wilson, Mike Brown, right? Derek Wilson, Darren, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
The cop. So was that guy guilty? Was the cop guilty? I'll ask you right now.
Probably.
He wasn't. He wasn't at all. Go read the autopsy report. So
yeah, I did actually.
Mike Brown reached into the cop's car and went for his gun. It's very clear. Obama's, what was that guy's? Was it not Holder? Holder
from the car. He was shot. Yeah, he was shot 50 feet away from the car, and the shots that hit him in the top of the head were when he's dying and falling down. He gets hit in the top of the head.
That's not true.
Yes,
it's not true. We can go through the report if you want, but it's not true.
But there's video, right?
No, there's no video, unfortunately.
But the way that anyway, I'm not an expert in forensics or anything like that, but the autopsy report makes it pretty clear, and Holder and crew verified it because they were irate at the time. So they went and reviewed it and they looked into it. And so you're talking about Obama's DOJ saying that it was a legit killing.
Well, so when you
so the thing is, like at the time, right?
What is it that Joe said isn't true? What are you actually contesting as the truth?
So
What's not? Well, he wasn't 50 feet away from getting shot. He was right outside his car.
no, he was not. Bullshit, because there's pictures, overhead pictures of the cop car and his body.
Right, and that's what I'm asking, is because if that's where the point of contestation is, then who has something to verify?
And it's also not with Darren. It's also not.
I don't want to offend you, Joe.
He said that Mike Brown ran away and then turned around and put his head down like in a football stance and charged him, and he fired the shots. So it was not next to the car. Even his own words was that he was further away from the car, approaching.
When we do this again, I'll make sure I have the quotes from the autopsy report, and we can discuss it. But let's if we can just shelve that specific part, right? Without even getting that deep into it, right? The idea that somebody like me would dare to believe a cop over a guy that just robbed a liquor store as being like a contentious thing was like that whole animus, right? We were coming off of that going into Kaepernick, right?
Which I think is fair.
Right. It wasn't like Kaepernick just one day up and did it. Right. It was all connected as part of this overall thing. And it really hit home, like when Breonna Taylor happened, right? There was sure, but like before that, there was some contentious, like, is this legit? Is this not? And the idea that you couldn't be outspoken if you might have a conflicting opinion was kind of agreed on.
But again, just say for sake of argument that Mike Brown was a good shoot, right? Just let's say for sake of argument, let's put that to the side for a second.
Sure.
However, I remember listening on the radio when everything was going down. If you listen to the way immediately how the police started like putting out negative, not even related to the supposed robbery, just negative information on him, trying to undermine him as a person before there was any other information released. So I knew.
I'm not on the radio.
Right. So I was. So the whole thing was to fix his end, and this is just the latest in a string. And again, I've talked before on the show. Richard Pryor, in 1975, was talking about how if he gets pulled over by the cops, how he wants to make sure that he doesn't do certain things because they'll say he's reaching for his waistband and shoot him. 1975, so it was not even a new thing then. So, and I've said this before. Sometimes, and I said this to you, sometimes people can make the wrong decision. They can say, okay, I thought it was this and thought it was that, and it really wasn't. However, when there's this long string of evidence of times when it was, if they get it wrong on that rare occasion, I cut them some slack and say, okay, maybe it wasn't this time, maybe it wasn't sexism this time or racism this time or whatever. But there's been so many examples that person, the odds were in their favor to assume that that's what was the case.
I get it, but still, assuming that that's a good shoot, Darren Wilson's life was ruined over nothing. You run the show, Ringmaster. You could just talk.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but I've got myself on mute, and I don't want to interrupt you guys because it's like actually a lot for me to do to all of the things. So, but I guess oh no, what was my thought that I was gonna say? I totally had a thought, and now I fucking lost it. God damn it! I hate that. Never mind. Forget it. I'll say it when I remember it. It'll like probably come in the middle of whenever one of you guys is talking. So, by the way, hi Kazoom.
Hey there, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Got here a little late, but you made it.
Always good to see you.
Yep.
Hey, can I ask you guys a question? Really, since I just like managed to totally foobar all of that. So it is 7:45, and I think that normally Got That Funk logs off at 8. But since we got started late, do we want to just keep going a little bit longer than normal?
Well, we usually go to like 11:30 Eastern time, and so that's 45 minutes from now.
Okay, well, I guess when that time comes, I'll ask again.
Awesome.
Can I just say I'm a fan of Kazoom?
I think everybody's a fan of Kazoom.
Yeah, who is it?
I'm basically considering whether or not I should like throw my bra at him right now. I mean,
Did you throw your bra?
well, I'm not actually wearing my bra, so it'll be really easy because it's like right over there, and I can just throw it. Like right now, I'm wearing a sports bra. I don't got to take nothing off.
Damn.
Although our ratings might go up, I guess. I don't know.
People be backing it up and bringing it forward.
Okay, I remember what I was going to say.
Like the Bruce film.
What I was going to say. So, like, one of these things that bothers me about the Colin Kaepernick protest thing is people talking about how it's disrespectful to the flag. And the only reason this bothers me, because I'll be honest, I agree that he has the right to kneel or do whatever the hell he wants to do, right? That is some kind of peaceful protest. I also find that personally, I would have a very difficult time, and never in my life have I done it in a form of protest, to not like cross my heart or do the, like if I was at a sports event, you know, to sing the national anthem or do whatever, right? Because to me, it's really to me personally, I don't care what the words are, because it's all about what I think about it in my own head, right? And to me, America means that everybody has the right to kind of express themselves what they want, so long as they're not punching another person in the nose. But what bothers me about the Colin Kaepernick thing is the other people who, like you were saying, veterans, for example, people that have fought in war, they are so bothered by anybody desecrating a fucking piece of fabric that happens to have colors in the way that they identify as their colors, right? That they lose their mind about it. And to me, if that is how far it has gone, like, and I mean, and I'm coming from like a biker family, like partying with, you know, people who are all kinds of veterans and stuff like that, right? Like that's a huge portion of my background and upbringing. Yet still, if that thing is so powerful in you that you can't let go of it for a second to let somebody else do their thing, that it's so offensive to you that it controls your action, maybe you ought to step back and consider your own. I mean, it's a fucking flag, right?
Hashtag not all veterans give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of
50% of the panel is former service. So
your point is what?
Well, I mean, you know,
am I offending you?
No, not at all. I'm just saying that, you know, if you want to talk about what veterans think, or, you know, I mean, there's 3 on the panel, and I can guarantee we all don't agree on this issue.
Well, no, but I mean, what I'm saying,
like,
though, is that,
for instance, I don't do the
religious bend, then give it a cross, make it a cross.
But right, as an example, I don't do the pledge. I don't do the hand on the heart. I don't do the pledge.
I don't say that in God we trust part.
Well, I mean, I don't swear fealty.
Under God. Sorry.
I don't swear fealty or allegiance to a cloth. The Constitution, exactly. That's different. But not a cloth. You know, that cloth is just a symbol of something else. So so I don't do the.
That's my point. That's my point.
Well, also too, I mean, I've heard, you know, some angry veterans, you know, were, you know, saying how they were insulted and all that. And, you know, you're insulted. But the whole thing is, you know, and some of them were like, well, you know, I fought for that person's right. And well, you did, right? And then now they're exercising that right. And so they shouldn't be barred. I mean, because it's, and, you know, the idea that, well, I fought for them the right to express themselves, so therefore they should not do it because I don't like the way they're doing it. Well, that's totally opposite of what you were doing in the first place.
Right. I got to be careful how I word this. I support your right to burn a flag. Right. I almost said I support flag burning, and I don't. But I support your right to do it. You know, there's 2 different things. You know.
Yeah, they definitely are.
I was in. I didn't see combat at all. I never left the States. You know, but you know, still I was in. I could have gone. I mean, if something happened, I would have been whatever, you know. But so I was there. I volunteered to put my life on the line to defend certain ideas and principles, and I would, yeah, absolutely, fight to defend somebody's right to burn a flag, because their right to express themselves is far more valuable than that cloth.
Man, I just want to say, by the way, like, thank you to every single one of you men here on this panel if you have served, like, because even though I have my own opinions, like, your service has allowed me to have the room for those opinions, and I recognize that. Also, you've done a thing that I could not bring myself to do, because I thought for a long time about joining the military when I was young, and I decided not to. Not because I didn't want to fight, because I thought that I was better than being yelled at by somebody in boot camp telling me what to do all the time and making me feel like a total piece of shit. Like, I mean, that was my thought at 18. So
You'd be surprised what you could do. And of the three, there's 2 men that were in the service and me. So,
well, I'm just saying that I give respect to you, one, for just like doing the thing, but also I give respect to you from a personal standpoint of I wasn't able to do that. Like, when I thought about that, I just thought, I can't deal with that. I can't deal with somebody screaming in my face. I can't deal with somebody telling me whatever they tell you in boot camp the way you see in movies. So, okay, now I'm going to put everybody like this and hold up your numbers. Who's going first? Second, third,
I think Joe wants to go first.
Joe, go, Joe.
Yeah. So, I mean, I in the past, because, you know, the type of work I do, operators and tradespeople tend to be more conservative. So, you know, but, you know, I get along with most people, but there are a number of job sites where like the conservative guys, they know I'm more liberal, and, you know, after a while they get to know each other, and then we get more buddy, and almost without fail, like, somebody will ask me about my thoughts on flag burning, like, should it be against the law? And so I always put it this way: I think that flag burning is stupid, and I particularly if you're angry at the actions of the government, if you're angry at the actions of an administration, then your flag burning is misplaced. Because to me, you're literally saying that the ideals that the flag represents, the Constitution and everything behind it, you don't agree with. That's how I see it. However, I think any law preventing you from burning a flag would violate the principles that the flag stands for.
Well, there's also legal precedent for that, sir.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think to a T.
Cool.
So I mean, yeah, like before we knew what Kaepernick was trying to do, right? It's, look at that. I mean, like, I can say, well, that's a shitty thing to do. Like, just because I say it's a shitty thing to do doesn't mean I want to ban it. But it's still a shitty. Like, if I went up to a Muslim and I just, like, started shredding out pages out of the Quran and threw it on the ground, I mean, it's a shitty thing to do. Like, I'm not trying to make people mad.
oh, we are. I don't know exactly where you know the show from or how you found the show, but a whole bunch of us that are on here all the time are from the atheist community on YouTube, going back years, many years. I mean, oh my God, over 10 years. And it was a very common thing for a lot of people in our community to do really stupid, shitty things, like, you know, roll joints with pages out of the Bible, to burn the Quran on camera just so they can say they did it and that they're tough guys for doing it.
I mean, we used to, like, glue Playboy pages into Gideon's Bibles and then put them back.
No, but I mean, they would do this stuff in videos for YouTube for the consumption of other atheists.
Smuggle wafers out of the Catholic Church in order to violate them later.
I have totally dropped the body of Jesus on the floor of a pub. I'm just letting you know.
Well, see, what I did was, now I object to book burning in any form, because I just think what it represents is not a good thing. So, but what I did do was I wrote the name of various books. I put holy books and science books, and I burnt those slips of paper saying, okay, nothing is above reproach. No idea is sacrosanct. However, I object to the notion, the idea of burning a book is repellent to me, so I won't ever do it. But I basically said, okay, I'm in solidarity with your right to do it, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, on the right, we just call that being rude.
I mean, I'm with you on the book burning thing, though. Like that, I have destroyed one book in my life, and I think that the only books that I've thrown away were Dreamweaver 2003 tech books.
So I mean, there was, they did these things in order to get a reaction. The whole point was that they were showing that they were big and bad and tough. And it was supposed to piss off believers. It was supposed to piss off religious people. And I don't know about, I can't speak for anybody else, but a lot of us, I know for a short time, I kind of got caught up in that. A lot of people in the community did because, we were so cool because we were atheists on the computer. Yay, we did the whole draw pictures of Muhammad. The only purpose that served was to mock Muslims and to piss them off. And it's stupid. It was stupid.
Well, I go slightly different on that because that's Paul had done the have you seen this man thing, and
that was better.
Right, and the idea there was that people, there were Muslims that were basically threatening violence on people for making a representation of Muhammad, and it was like, well, no, you can't tell me. So like what I did was I'm not an artist, but I did on the computer and I drew like a little figure. And I wrote, and I wrote in Arabic. Yeah, and it's actually praise be to Allah. So it's like,
you speak Arabic?
No, I don't, but I looked it up.
Okay.
Google Translator.
I got to translate. So this way, it was actually Muhammad saying something that was religiously sensitive, but I was saying no. But you can't tell me that I can't do this. If your religion doesn't allow you to do that, then you should not do that. But you can't take away my right or anybody else's. But you're right, Rob. There are a lot of people who do it just to be dicks. And actually, as far as conservatives would call it rude, there were conservative preachers who burnt Qurans, but they were the same one.
There was one famous one.
No, more than one. One that got a lot of note, but there were more. It was not the only one. But the thing is,
was that the same guy that wanted to do the lists of atheists? Wasn't that the same guy?
Yeah, I think it was actually.
Yeah, it was. And in fact, Rob, you and I think Mike, you were on the list, and Peach was, and Aaron. There was a website that was tracking YouTube atheists, and apparently I was big enough to make the list.
I didn't. I don't think I was on that list.
You weren't you? I know Peach was.
I don't think Peach was on there. You were on there. I don't think I made enough noise to get on there.
But I mean, the thing is, conservatives do plenty of things that other people think are rude. They only get upset when it's coming back the other way.
Those jerks. Oh, those such assholes.
Yeah, but so we'll get you someday. We're gonna pull you over. We'll just have to show why you're wrong about almost everything.
No.
Reality has a little.
But we can at least be friendly. But
okay, like Republicans. That dude, he pisses me off. He's
not a real person.
No, he is. It's curious. He's a YouTuber. Yeah, he is a real person, and he's an asshole. His videos are just as belligerent and ridiculous as his comments in here. He's been around a while, and he's an asshole. But I mean, like he's like, Biden is that's treasonous. Biden being president is treasonous, and it's a communist coup. It's like you don't even know what any of these words mean.
Yeah, and again, I do want to say, Vegas, that yes, I do appreciate you did come on, and we did talk actually. For people who don't know, some of us we did our own little stream hangout. We couldn't stream it to YouTube, but there was like 4 of us. Mike was in it. Vegas was in it. Was one other person besides you, the 3 of us. Who was the other person? I don't remember. I thought there was 4 of us.
Badger, the Brit guy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was Brian. So and I appreciate you coming in. And I'll say this, and I'll say a name I haven't said in a while. You have way more integrity than Brock.
Huh?
Brock, Ask a Conservative. He's been in the chat. He hasn't been here in a while, but he's one of the spitballers. He sits there and he throws stones, but he never has the stones to come on and actually talk to us. And at least you did, and that's commendable.
Well, so I lost my train of thought way earlier. The hill that not the TV show, but the YouTube show with Sanger and this
Rising.
girl's name, Rising. Okay, so on there they reference this article, and I went and read it. I actually put it in the chat earlier, but also there took a poll. Like the number one issue for both sides is over healthcare, over any other thing that you want, any kind of program. It's the other side, right? And the animus is real, right? So I found myself getting into that trap some time ago, and I've just tried to subscribe and humanize my opponents to make sure that I didn't go off the deep end and whatnot.
So I'm also one of those people who doesn't say that part of the Pledge of Allegiance that has under God in it. I believe that it was edited in the 50s by.
Yep, it was. That's legit.
That I find actually unconstitutional and breaching the whole separation of church and state.
I'm hauling you off to jail for not saying it.
Yeah, nobody does, but I think it's wrong that we have In God We Trust on our money. I'm one of those people, but also when I saw Kaepernick kneeling, like I wouldn't have thought it was a thing except for the reaction of the right. To me, it was a meaningless thing except for to him. Without somebody spelling it out for me what he was kneeling for, I wouldn't know. And if somebody was burning a flag, I don't consider it bad speech. It's just very sloppy, unless they have written on the white stripes exactly what they're protesting about, so that I know what it is that they mean when they're burning it. Right? It's just a very sloppy, crude form of expression. I think every mural by Banksy has more meaning in it than a flag burning.
I know.
I didn't mean to snore.
They are.
Banksy. He's an icon on the left, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know the name Banksy, but I have no idea who they are.
He's a street graffiti guy that does interesting street art and other things.
What do you think about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What he falls into the anarcho left side of the political spectrum, as I gather.
Like, what do you think about the taking down of monuments, not the destruction of them, but the taking down of them and maybe putting them someplace like in a museum or some other memorable place where they're not lauded as public figures, but also not destroyed, so that history can be studied, remembered, preserved, good or bad.
Are you asking me?
Everybody.
I don't care. Yeah, I think it depends on what it was there for and why somebody put it there and when they did it. There's clearly some cases that a lot of the statues went up in like the 50s and 60s, and it was sort of done deliberately to kind of squelch, put some people down and whatnot. And if that worked to facilitate that, then yeah. But there are some cases, like there was the one with Abe Lincoln, with the slave on his knees going to, he's getting released from his shackles. Like sometimes I get confused on where the line is for that sort of thing. I think it's kind of blurry, but yeah, in clear-cut cases, yeah, take them down, but don't destroy them, but move them somewhere else.
See, I'm kind of okay with it. Like, I wasn't originally when that whole thing first emerged as a social issue, right? Which I think was in North Carolina, maybe it was after the to-do that happened there. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Hey, wait, don't make that face, boobs. Don't, Rob. Don't make that face. Don't make that face like, oh God, you're hurting my head. If I'm hurting your head, you should correct me. But that's when I first, I guess, became aware of it, was the kind of the North Carolina incident. And I actually didn't agree with taking down the statues. I thought these are things that people have put up, and they're monuments to they're monuments to people, but over time they become a record of history, and I thought that was important. But I guess that
there's a lot of nuance there, right? So
there is, that's true, and people.
So like General Lee was on both sides, right? There's other famous Confederates that were on both sides, and as far as the reverence goes for military, like I think of Stonewall, it's just there's a lot of history there, and it depends on what you're.
Well, there's just so many things so that a person can be revered for, right? So you can have, let's just, I keep wanting to say Isaac Newton, but that's not who I mean, but I have that in my head because of something somebody earlier in the show said, but Thomas Jefferson, didn't he have slaves, right? So like,
it's more complicated, but yes,
this brilliant person who did many, many good things, but had slaves, right? So there's like, yeah, so you're right, it's complicated, but I mean,
but it's even more complicated than that. Like Thomas Jefferson didn't just have slaves.
Well, wasn't his like lover a slave woman that went to
he liked black people
and then chose to stay with him? Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but she chose to stay with him after she was given her freedom, which is
no, she was never given her freedom.
Yeah, didn't he take her to England with him? And when she was in England, she was told, "You don't have what?"
No, she was never freed.
I must be thinking of somebody different then.
The children he had by her, he freed, but he went upon his death, but he never emancipated her.
Well, I guess maybe I'm thinking of something different. I'm either thinking of a different person or a different story, but
yeah, I'm just saying that lover is an interesting word for that. So, but okay, you could go ahead.
Oh,
I mean, the way I look at it is, I don't have a problem. I kind of wish we didn't have any statues venerating people. I think commemorating events, because that's where the history is. The history is in the events. So commemorate the events, and yeah, you should learn who the players were. But when you put up statues venerating somebody, you end up elevating them to stations that nobody really deserves.
I mean, we've had this topic in here.
I don't know if I agree with that.
We've had this topic in here about a dozen times now already, I think, and I mean I kind of agree with you, Joe. And like we do a lot of like with the founders. There's a lot of statues of the founders, and they would be horrified by it. I mean, like from what I have seen and read from them, they wouldn't like that. They wouldn't like that at all. A couple of them might, but for the most part, it wouldn't be. They'd be like, "What the hell happened to the country that we made? What's wrong with you fucking people?"
Go ahead. Sorry, Kazim.
I was just going to say, when it comes to any of these statues, I definitely do not think they should be demolished or destroyed. But I think either the museum idea, or I think that on any of these statues, a plaque should be placed there describing the context for, what did this person actually represent? What is the history? So that people, so when you are out in public and you see one of these statues, you can see what it actually stood for.
I think that's important, and that's one of the things that I had said. I wanted to ask a lot of Southerners who were upset about the removal of statues, because they say, "Oh, well, it's our history." I'm like, well, then let's put up statues of Union soldiers, because that's part of your history too. So, but I bet you most of them would object. And so then it's like, well, then I say, well, then you're not really trying to preserve history, then, are you? You're trying to create a narrative and can perpetuate a narrative that's been a false narrative that's been going on for 150 years about what actually happened and why, even though the people who did it at the time wrote extensively about what they were doing and why.
I like Kazum's idea the best. Actually, I toured Central Asia quite a bit, and the whole Soviet bloc. They still have all that stuff up, and they had plenty of reason to tear a lot of that stuff down, and they didn't. And it's kind of neat to look at. I'm kind of glad that they didn't tear it down.
Yeah, no, I actually kind of like Kazum's idea best too, myself. Just like, even though I said a different thing, that's what I sort of like best, because I too have traveled, and I've traveled to places that have existed long before America was anything more than, savage, untamed, giant flora and fauna land, right? So
that's everywhere outside of North and South America.
Well, but it's really very cool, and to me, maybe it's just, I don't know, but to me, when I have gone to places or go to places that are thousands of years old, and I walk on that ground and I look at a thing that was erected by people that are just, millennia beyond me, I can touch the same thing that they touched. There is a profundity in that. And this is why I originally didn't like the idea of tearing down the statues, because even though right now it's the zeitgeist, that in 100 years or 500 years, right, this now just comes to represent the existence of humanity, something that people used to believe, or who was this person, what were they about? And I guess I just find that very very connecting with,
almost spiritual, would you say?
Yes, like in kind of a spiritual way, like go fuck yourself. I mean, for real, like I mean, yeah, like I know that's you're making fun of me, but that is kind of what I think. It's kind of a spiritual thing. So I don't know if spiritual is the right word, but I did say erect. Don't even get me started. You remember when we had like a freaking 5-hour live stream and we talked about sex? I was on it. I mean,
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, so don't get me started. Because I'm in charge. I'm charged.
Well, the thing is too, though, you remember, the statues you're talking about, for the most part, those were achievements in their time, and we're talking mostly about knockoff, mass-produced statues that were made in the 50s and 60s that were literally created to intimidate a whole bunch of people.
How in the fuck do you make a knockoff statue?
In a factory.
Factories.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah. There's this thing called mass production. You may have heard about it.
Yeah, I know, but statues, like, show me a statue that's a knockoff.
There are tons of them all over the South.
No, they're not knockoffs. They're originals.
Well, they're
just all the same.
They're all the they're
all the same.
This is my real disbelief. This is not me actually trying to be a douche. I don't believe that there's knockoff statues.
There were statues that were mass produced.
So I know this.
Is this
I know
real?
when I see on TV, when I see like ISIS going somewhere and destroying statues and landmarks and blowing up ancient works of art carved into a mountain.
That shit pisses me off big time.
I mean, and it's something that I've never seen. I will never see. A lot of the times it's something I never even heard of, but it hurts. It hurts to see.
It hurts like burning books.
And I can't, right? And I can't help for a small part of me to feel in a similar way when mobs of people tear down some of these statues and destroy them. I think that the statue should go, but I don't necessarily believe that they should be destroyed. And I kind of like the idea of a plaque, and I also kind of like the idea of like a museum garden for them.
Well,
So when they need to be put in context, and I think that's the most important thing. There needs to be like, this is why this is here. This is what it was. This is where it came for. And the person that it depicts is a piece of shit.
here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though. A large number of Americans, left, right, and center, cheered when we pulled down the statue of Saddam Hussein, and no one said, "Oh, we got to preserve history." So I kind of find a lot of people to be hypocritical, because if you cheered that statue going down and tried the rest, then you're full of crap.
No, but Joe,
in the United States that happened?
No, in Iraq.
It happened in Baghdad.
In Baghdad, they pulled down the statue and Americans cheered. But we are hypocritical. Everybody, you're a hypocrite too, Joe. Everybody is about something, but we all are. So I can forgive it. Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, I can forgive it to an extent, because we all are.
But see, the thing is, though, that's so naked, though, because it's like you to make this argument. Oh, it's so terrible, this and all these reasons why it's terrible. But that one over there, that one made me happy. Like, well, then, but see, or I guess I would say to anyone like that, at least they should understand. Well, the same way you felt about that Saddam Hussein statue going down, I felt about people like tearing down the oppressors of my ancestors who kept my people as property. I think, as I said the last time, now that I know names of some of them, it's a very personal to me, because it's not just like generic. I actually know the names of several slave ancestors, one of whom lived into the 50s.
I feel like it's making me have interesting thoughts. I don't know that if I want to delve into the depth of those thoughts, but
no, that's okay.
I'm glad to listen to you guys right now, because the whole topic in general I find interesting. Although I will say I sort of want to hear what you guys think about what's happening right now with the bombing, because what I've read on it is not a lot, but I did look into a little bit, and I kind of want to hear what you guys are thinking about this thing going on in the news for the last few days. Who wants to go first? Who's brave? Joe, you're brave.
Joe. I actually watched a good video by Bo, the Fifth Column. And basically what he made the point of that it was a proportional response, and it was done against the group that attacked. Because basically, people don't know, a couple of weeks ago, there was an attack by these non-state actors supported by Iran, but they're separate entities, and they attacked a place where there's Americans, both soldiers and contractors, and did some damage. So he attacked back in a proportional way and did not attack Iran, did not threaten Iran. And I think that, even Bo was saying, I think it was necessary, because if you basically allow people to keep doing that, you basically send a signal that it's okay to attack and try to kill our people. We won't do anything. But instead of a ridiculous over-the-top response, and instead of escalating it, it was kind of like a tit for tat. Like, okay, if you do this to us, we're going to respond. Now that, especially since now we're actually trying to have negotiations with Iran, it's a way to kind of set the boundaries and say, hey, we know you're responsible. We're not going to, call off the talks. We're not going to attack your country. However, we're also not going to let your proxies attack us without response. That's it.
So I don't know if it's because of I'm American, or if it's because of my service. I don't get all bent out of shape when we bomb people. We every single year, almost every single year that I've been alive, we've bombed somebody. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, that is normal. A proportional response to me is proportional. That's fine. That's good. It's we didn't bomb somebody for no reason.
Yeah, so
I would have a problem with that.
So that's the thing. Like they did actually, like Americans were attacked, and this was a response bombing, as it were.
Right.
Because
And that to me is justified.
yeah, to me, yeah, okay, I agree.
I mean, there's a lot of I've got a lot of like lefty and very, very, very far lefty friends. And they are like losing their fucking minds over this.
Why
And
so?
it's just like but you can't allow, especially when you're, you know, the American empire, you can't allow your people, your troops, your contractors to be unnecessarily
Aggressed.
targeted and challenged and aggressed, and then not address that. I mean, it needs to be addressed. I mean, I don't think we should like load up, you know, a whole bunch of personnel carriers and head over there and, you know, turn the place into a skating rink or anything. But we need to do something. And I think what they did makes sense.
So okay. Never mind. I'll just be quiet now. I don't know.
I mean, the thing is, unfortunately, and this is something where I actually will agree more with right wingers than left wingers. There seems to be of late, and not entirely undeserved, that the people on the left have this knee jerk reaction to any military thing, like well, if you engage any military activity whatsoever, you're a warmonger, and I don't accept that whatsoever.
That's ridiculous.
Context matters, and yeah, adventurism. We don't want adventurism. Like I look at the 2 times we fought against Iraq. Look at the 91 Gulf War and I look at the 2003 Gulf War. The 91 Gulf War was justified. They invaded a country. The United Nations voted, hey, we gotta kick them out. We, as part of a coalition, went in there and we said, no, Iraq, you violated international law. You're committing atrocities, and we're going to kick you out. What we did in 2003 was predicated on lies, and we basically attacked the country just because we wanted to, and was not justified. So we should be able to differentiate the two. And like Rob said, we were attacked, or our people were attacked, and that's different than just saying, hey, I don't like those fuckers, let's drop some bombs on them.
Vegas?
I'm gonna really try not to get animated. I don't know what your lefty friends say, Rob, but they're probably right. I disagree with Joe. Like in that, I don't know why you would think that's an exception rather than the rule that you were lied into war. I don't know why you would believe any kind of narrative that comes out of these places at all. Yeah, the events that happened in the last couple of days with Biden going to, or not going to, but calling the king on the phone about MBS, like that it's coincidental that all this stuff happens at the exact same time, right? That the delayed report doesn't suggest that there isn't any kind of signaling or messaging from Saudi, what is clearly a Saudi-inspired attack in Syria. It's clearly that. And I am bothered by the left because in their victimology hierarchy, war is at the bottom. And I don't get it. I really don't. It drives me insane.
Say again?
But
I don't understand what you're saying.
Just
what do you mean by the
detached.
hierarchy?
Like, I mean, you have all these social things and all these concerns for different groups, but like it stops at the border.
No,
I don't get it.
That's not true at all. In fact, there's a lot of people on the left. The reason why they didn't vote for Hillary Clinton is because she favored going into Libya, and I know a ton of lefties have called her a warmonger. I don't think that's a fair charge at all. But
she's hawkish. Hillary Clinton's hawkish.
She's totally hawkish.
But the whole
Biden's hawkish.
But the whole thing is, though, is the idea that the left doesn't address that or consider that's complete. I mean, that's fantasy.
It's not complete. Joe Biden wasn't just a proponent of the Iraq War. He was the proponent of the Iraq War for the left. He was the guy,
I mean,
key
does
enabler.
that mean Joe Biden actually did something? He wasn't, inactive?
No,
no, just-
Biden's hawkish.
No, is that I say he's hawkish, but what my point is that you're saying that the left doesn't care about that, and I'm telling you that's false.
Well, I mean, I mainly see the people on the left complaining about it when there's a right winger who's hawkish, but they don't seem to complain much when there's a left winger who's hawkish. I mean, I hardly heard anyone during Obama's presidency. I hardly heard anyone complain about Obama's warmongering.
Okay, hold on.
Oh my God, that you weren't paying
I have a comment about that.
I mean,
I sure as hell did.
Oh my God, the left went on and on and on and on calling Obama a war criminal, and saying that what his use of drones on the amount of civilians that were killed under the Obama administration was way out of bounds and nowhere near what should be acceptable.
Well, where was it? Where was it said? Where were they talking about this? Where were the left talking about this? I mean, it certainly wasn't on mainstream news.
Mainstream news isn't left.
Exactly.
The mainstream news is not left. There is no left on non-cable. There is right wing, and then there is kind of a centrist, kind of feel good bubblegum and rainbows kind of a thing. And that would be what everybody calls the left. CNN is not left. MSNBC is not left. They're not left. They are establishment centrist Democrats, but they're not left.
I think Vegas is going to have like an aneurysm.
They're not left. There is no real left in the United States.
Okay. Well, you know who they're talking about? It's the left. That's who they're talking about. So
right, but it isn't left. But it isn't left.
It is left of center.
There's
for sure.
There's left of center don't mean nothing. That means nothing when the right wing mediascape is like this massive from right of center to way the fuck out to fascist land. Is that whole big stretch? That's the right wing media. The left wing media is MSNBC.
So here's my objection to what Kazim said, right?
Okay.
It's slightly different than yours, Rob. But my objection to what Kazim said is this whole warmongering idea of Obama. Like, first of all, yeah, so this is a thing that I keep hearing, right? It's like, well, Obama went to all these wars and did all of this bullshit, and I'm like, yes, that's right, he did it, and he did it with drones, which was an attempt, it was a tactic to radically minimize human death, right? So
No.
During his presidency.
It was an attempt to reduce American deaths.
What
not
the fuck ever? That's what you do in war. You attempt to reduce your side's death. That is what General Patton, right?
Yes.
Like, that is the purpose of war, right? It's to make the other guy die for his country, not you die for yours. Right? Like
I can't say Obama killed them, but under the Obama administration, a lot of civilians were killed, and Americans and American
anything for 20 years past.
And Americans were targeted.
Yeah. And
war, and Americans are always targeted.
Civilian deaths under Obama were way less than what were under either Bush administration.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Wait, let Vegas speak really quick, because he did in fact put a hand up, so I want to honor that.
Yeah, so it was less. He also didn't. The circumstances weren't the same either. He didn't invade countries per se.
Right.
But the thing is, that dude is not exactly a peacenik, right? So, my experience matches Kazum. I thought that when it was convenient, politically expedient to make a mockery of George W. or George Jr., right? In 2000, like after September 11th, going into Afghanistan and going to Iraq, the outcry was palpable. It was very noticeable from the right. And when Obama got it, you guys shut the fuck up by comparison.
If you're talking about the media response, I'll agree with you. But as far as
it was like
actual leftists in our country despise Hillary and have a big hate boner against Obama for their military.
How many actual leftists are in the country? Like that are, I'm talking about the left broadly.
Dude, that's what I just said. Wait. That's what I just said. You made faces at me.
Yeah.
You
Well,
rolled your eyes at me when I'm like, there's no real left in this country, and you rolled your eyes at me, and now you just said how many actual leftists are in this country.
There you
Well,
go.
Well,
thank you
yeah.
for
Well,
agreeing
no,
with me.
but clearly,
Please.
Well, and here's the other
clearly,
thing.
I'm saying CNN. Okay, in a binary between CNN and Fox News, clearly CNN is the left one, Fox News is the right one,
That's
right?
the media, though. Again, we're not talking about the media. We're talking about people, actual people. The thing too, though, is that and actually something you just said, Vegas, which I agree with, is that also the context, and that's another thing. Do I get angry at the left? Because the one thing again that the left, are, whatever we have as a left in this country hates Obama for is Libya. But the thing is, we didn't start the fucking conflict in Libya. There was a civil war, and civilians were getting killed by the fucking truckload.
Oh my, yeah, but you know what?
Well, that's true. That's fucking true, right? And
No.
then we were.
Well, yes, it's true. Yes, it's true. What we did, like, you don't have to come to the same course of action to be like the right way.
No,
I disagree with what we did in Libya. I'm tired of being a policeman. I'm tired of getting into shit that people here in this country don't understand. They don't.
That's fine, but I don't really care right now. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the left. And
Nobody takes the time.
On the left that get so angry. And my thing is, we went in, we were involved for 2-3 weeks, and then helped the conflict end and put an end to massive civilian casualties. So
okay, you created a power vacuum again.
Well, and having a madman in power who is basically slaughtering people is good. I mean, what's your there's no, if you have a choice of two bad things, I'm going to go for the one that's going to end up with that doesn't have mass casualties going on. So
sorry, go ahead, Boobs. I was going to say
right now. This is about how the left responded, and my point is that the left went nuts because they're looking at it without context. They don't care about the power vacuum part. They're like, we used military, that makes you a warmonger, and it's horseshit.
So in Vegas's defense, there, if we're not supposed to be on the side of people who are warmongers who are bloody ripping people apart, we maybe don't want to be in bed with MBS.
Thank you. Thank you. It's insane. This Saudi worship is nuts.
Was that report that said that MBS had Khashoggi killed was delayed so that Biden could call the king of Saudi Arabia and try to ease the tension of this report being released. Then the report gets released on the exact same day that we bomb their enemy. So the both gets out at the same time. I'm just like, okay, was it like a quid pro quo? If we release this report that says your son did it, then we also bomb your enemy. Then can we call it a wash?
Well, I would like to divest from Saudi Arabia entirely. So I'm probably on the same side as Vegas there. Because I fuck Saudi Arabia.
Okay, and also Dev and then Vegas.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So create again, we create a power vacuum. But want to know something? Libya is going to be a problem. And no matter what, even if we didn't do anything, climate change is going to make Libya a fucking hotspot until all of us are all dead. It is going to be the central location for all of the water there. I think they've got the only natural source of any real quantity of water in the area. So it's only going to get worse in that whole fucking area. So we're always going to be involved there, unfortunately.
Isn't the only reason we're involved there is oil?
Water in Libya is a bigger deal.
For them.
Water no, I mean for the entire region though. Water is valuable. Water is very valuable and will become more valuable. So there's that. And as far as Saudi Arabia, I can't for the life of me understand why the last 20 motherfucking years we have had anything to do with them at all.
Try 50.
Well, I'm not talking about September 11th though. I mean, every single one of them was Saudi. I mean, to say that the Saudi government, that the royal family is innocent, that's fucking bullshit. I don't buy it. How does anybody fucking believe that?
Right. Even back to Carter.
Is my turn?
Yeah.
No, like I have a worldview that considers the relationship between the interdependency and the relationship between reserves like Saudi Arabia and the United States and the foreign policy that we take in places like Syria, right? Like, and Libya, right? Anybody that seems to contest the petrodollar gets the hammer, right? And I just don't think that the radical left, if that is really all it is, which I don't feel like it is, I feel like plenty of people on the right don't believe and should not believe the narrative from the media or anybody official on what happens there. I just don't. It's why would you trust these people about any of it? I don't get it. Anyway.
How do you discern who and or what to trust then? Like, what are your criteria for that? Because you must trust something, and
that's the thing. I don't know what it is, but I know what it's not. I know it's not what they're talking about.
I mean, I can tell you how I come to trust things, but I'm curious how you might come to trust things.
I know what I don't trust. When I saw us do nothing about Crimea, I was kind of horrified because I felt for those people. When I see us right now doing nothing for the people in Hong Kong, and how they're being basically eaten up by China right now, and democracy is dying, I feel horrible that we're doing nothing. And there's a lot of politics involved, but I do not trust people who don't have any feelings for those people and just let those stories die.
The United States almost never picks up anything that's a clear-cut moral conundrum, like Darfur, Hong Kong. Like, it never attacks the clear-cut, everybody agrees this needs to stop shit. It's always mired in this relationship, this fiasco that we have had set up with these people for 50 fucking years, and it needs to stop. Like, we got to cut them off. We got to cut them off bad. Like this whole thing with Khashoggi, like with all respect to Khashoggi, I am kind of exploiting his death, right? Because I thought that this could have been the one time that maybe MBS, there would have been like a break in the chain to allow us to like actually divorce from this entity. In Biden, right? Like, obviously, I'm a conservative. I don't like the guy anyway. But like, I genuinely was hopeful that he was just going to do what he said, and it wasn't even like it was a campaign promise. But we're talking about like last week. He said that this was going to be declassified at such and such time. He didn't say, I'm going to delay it a day, and on the day that I was supposed to deliver the report, I'm going to go bomb Syria. And when he was on the campaign trail, he made it abundantly clear he was going to turn them into the pariah that they belonged to be. Ain't happened, folks. He's a fucking warmonger. I hate to break it to you.
So prior to this...
Hold on, wait, Dev. Dev had a thing.
Okay.
I had a thing because I was doing like this. So I had a thing. So
and that basically
you want to yes.
Me.
You want to interrupt me?
That's
you
what
do
you
this.
get for having a woman in charge.
so I don't know, and I should have actually said that at the beginning. I don't know a lot about what went on the last few days. I have been preoccupied. I've got bits and pieces. So most likely, because listening to Vegas, I think I'm kind of with him here because he's saying stuff I hadn't heard. So because like I said, I've been busy. You guys know I've been, I've been dealing.
So prior to this report coming out, there's a documentary called The Dissident on the death of Khashoggi, right? It's on Amazon. You have to pay for it right now. It was $20 back when I watched it. It's like $5.99 right now. Netflix isn't carrying it because Netflix is more of an international entity than Amazon is. as far as distribution rights for films.
It's an excellent
The previous
documentary.
movie that the director Brian Fogel made was Icarus, which it won awards, right? It was this huge movie on Netflix. But what you see with him talking about the Saudis is this sort of Pepsi and Coke of you're being able to distribute a film in certain markets, right? The Dissident is not to be viewed by anyone in the Middle East because it paints the picture very clearly of MBS being the bad guy in Khashoggi's death, and it follows this other journalist around that was in relation to Khashoggi and how he was being approached by like people from the Saudi country, some of them government officials, some of them like family members, basically saying, "Hey, why don't you come back to our country and we can settle all this?" And basically that guy's whole family is suffering in the country now because of what went down with Khashoggi. And the Dissident movie just like puts it all out there. The report is not as good as this one documentary.
Well, I mean, we all. I don't know anybody who didn't already know that he was involved in Khashoggi's death.
It's an open secret. Like,
well, I mean, it's not even much of a secret. We all knew it. We all knew it. What I didn't know was the connection between Saudi Arabia and the bombing.
It's an implicit relationship. It wasn't like Biden got on the horn with his, told his press secretary to do this. The timing of it, everything's always.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Like Sister Danger asked about how do you know who to trust, right? How do you know? And the thing is, well, you don't really. But if you make the connections based on all the information that's given, you're going to come to some logical conclusions, like the one that you did, Vegas. What you're talking about.
Right.
Like I hadn't heard all of those things that you're talking about. Because if I had heard them, I would have probably have come to the same conclusion.
Right.
This all smells fucking fishy.
Right. Now, and see, again, that's my point, is that when, at least on this issue, I don't know about, I'm not going to talk about any other issues, but at least on this issue, you seem to think that the left is in a opposition to your position, but I think that's not the case. I think you just haven't heard.
That's not my position about the left. My position about the left is they don't want to be critical of their own when it comes to this kind of thing.
And that's what I'm saying, though, is that's not the case.
I don't agree.
I know it's not you. I'm saying
no.
Look, before I met you guys, I don't know any people on the left at all.
Well,
okay?
see, that's the whole thing. You don't know people, so you're making some assumptions.
I'm learning.
Are you actually in Las Vegas?
Yeah. So
no.
Las Vegas voted blue, didn't they?
So that's irrelevant. But the whole point is that the thing is, you said you don't know much in the way of leftists. We do, and we see it all the time. And the other thing I'll point out too, and again, because this happens both ways. When Obama attacked Libya on Thursday, John McCain and a bunch of other Senate Republicans went on all the shows, and they were yelling about how Obama wasn't doing anything about Libya. He attacked them on Friday. And then on Sunday, the same senators went on all the shows and went off about how Obama was getting involved with adventurism, attacking Libya. So this is literally what you're talking about. This wasn't like rank and file. These are fucking elected officials who were lambasting him for not doing anything. And then when he did what they told him he should do, they were on his side.
Right.
Sorry.
So the thing is, you're not going to like to hear it, but I do think that a big, I'd like to think that at least a sizable portion of or of the people that come to support Trump was this sort of paleo-conservative, anti-neoconservative posture that kind of ran in a big part against this kind of thing, right? Against McCainism, if you will. Right? Like, I really do think that.
Well, that may be the case, but my point is that some of the other senators were people that were more in line with Trump and people who supported Trump later on. So, you may be right about that, but the whole thing is that a lot of those same guys ended up supporting Trump later on anyway, and currently do.
know we can't win.
I know an example of Vegas being wrong in hindsight, where like at the time, Vegas is right that the left was completely not being critical of what was going on, but then an even more left person looking at the situation made a very big statement about it, and that was Michael Moore in Bowling for Columbine, pointing out that the Columbine massacre happened to coincide with the day that we did the most bombing in Bosnia. And one of those got a lot of media attention and the other didn't. And that could have been, by design, that, one was a little bit more salacious. Let's run with that. Let's not be critical of the incumbent president that kind of lines up with the media picture of what it means to be a Democrat,
And I think there's I think there's at times I think the media is being used and being twisted and abused to further a narrative, and sometimes I think the media is completely complicit in twisting themselves to further a narrative. I think it's a very rare, and I think I've kind of said this kind of thing to Kazoom before, like when you watch any media that you choose to watch, you should understand who they are, what their bias is, which way they're twisted, and if you're okay with that and can separate the crap, from the reality and pull something of value out of it, good, go for it. I mean, I like MSNBC, and I know they're twisted.
Well,
I just don't take what they say as gospel.
Sometimes I wish that we could just have a place, website or whatever, that only listed factual things that have occurred. No opinions about them, nothing. Just literally a timeline of events. That's all I'm like literally, year, day, hour, minute. Timeline of events that occurred and nothing more. Because there is so much. There's so much that we talk about on this show, on other shows, that is trying to assess what's happening based on the things we see occurring. But the things we see occurring are through the lens of a media that wants us to see something particular, right?
Everything is through a lens.
Yeah, exactly. And if I could just see an actual timeline of events.
It's rare. It's rare. It's rare where you're going to get straight anything. It's rare.
And even taking the media out of it, people can observe events themselves, and then you can get, depending on their biases, will interpret it different ways. So what you're talking about would be lovely, impossible.
Hey, something I just want to say real quick is I find it interesting that during Obama's presidency, people on the right never were complaining about Obama's warmongering. They actually called Obama weak on terror. It was a continued thing. The right called Obama weak on terror, and yet here some of the same right wingers are now calling Biden a warmonger, but I don't know. It's like Trump's presidency completely changed the right wing.
No, it's politically convenient. That's why.
It was politically convenient.
Yeah.
So
that's what I don't think the anti-war segment now is politically convenient at all. But
if I were to ask my leftist friends to make a list of their criticisms of Obama, most of them, especially those who are subscribed to secular talk, would have in their top 3 things drone strikes. Like, it's a given. Like, we all know it happened. He was like the drone strike king.
Right.
And it's like top 3 of the problems we had with him. Number 2 would be PRISM and the Snowden affair and the surveillance of Americans.
But is that the left or is that liberals broadly? Because it doesn't seem like
it's the things that you would say are the biggest things to criticize them on, that we are saying we admit that was bad.
The third thing would
drone
probably
strikes
be
were bad.
I so fucking disagree with that. So pardon my French.
The third thing would probably be
Really
deportations.
bad French.
I would put my third as being not closing Guantanamo Bay when he said he would.
That is the thing.
He couldn't.
Yeah,
Why?
but it was a big campaign promise, and he failed.
Right, because
Why could he not do that?
many people on the left also don't understand process and understand what the limits of the presidency are. And so they constantly complain about not getting what they want when the circumstances to do that don't exist. Even now, with Biden got 50-50 Senate, and they're like, well, why doesn't he just do X, Y, and Z? And like, because he literally can't. You know,
I mean, there's no accounting for stupid. That's true.
No, you know what? Know what it is? You know what it is? And it drives me as crazy as it does Joe. I think these fucking people, when they spent 4 years screaming that Trump isn't a fucking king, he's not a king, he's not a king, he's not a king, right? And now Biden's in office. Like, why can't he just do what he wants to do? For the same fucking reason that Trump couldn't, you dumbasses.
Because he's not a king.
Holy shit! Because he's not a fucking king. My God.
Man, there's so much.
If
I think there's more. I think there's more negotiating even in this current the way the 50-50 split in the Senate. Like, they're going to try to earmark it. They're trying to get that through right now. But I don't know why, because they're not going to win. Like, I think if they did the direct payment things, even up to $2,000 today, I think it would pass. I think it would pass on the first go. If they just cut that one thing out and they sent that, I really do think that would pass. But they're going to try to do this. And I understand the game and I understand the strategy behind that. But I do question, like, why are you wasting time with the $15 minimum wage? You know you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it.
As opposed to what?
Right?
As opposed to what?
well,
As opposed to, well,
When you
so
say
they
why are
couple
you
these things.
wasting time? Like, as opposed to what?
this is already a dead issue, because as far as this particular bill, because the parliamentarian already said that it violates the rules of the Senate, and while Harris could overrule, she's not going to, for good reason. So basically it means that they're going to have to try to get it through other means. And so
You get reconciliation once.
right. So basically there was that Mitt Romney and some other Republican senator. Now they're putting up 10, which 10's not going to fly on the left, but they could probably end up coming up with maybe like 12, which is not what we want. But I'll take 12 over 725.
So okay, fair enough. But like, do you think it's worth? And you tell me. I'm asking honestly here. Do you really think that the stimulus, $1,600, the direct payments, just like, I don't even want one, but the $1,600, $2,000, whatever they decide it's going to be, do you not think that getting that out there, like, right now isn't the biggest priority? Like, these people have been without work for a fucking, like, a long time. Like actually. Like,
right. Well, the other.
Like, it seems like
it
seems like you're playing games.
Can I say something here?
Yeah.
Sorry. I see that Joe also wants to talk. So, and I don't want to. I'm gonna make myself. Joe, I also want to, like, bookmark you for speaking, but I really want to. I just want to be careful with the notion that we make these things mutually exclusive. Right? These things are very different. When we're talking about where are we putting our attention and our money, we're putting it overseas into this strike on another country, right? I feel like this is sort of putting people down a corridor, a mental one-issue corridor that is imaginary. Multiple issues can exist at the same time, right? We can have a thing that is going on overseas and still be dealing with this. Can we not? Am I wrong in that? Like, do we have to
in this
way to deal with the other?
Yeah, in this way, I think you are wrong. So the argument I'm making is the way that they're packaging the bill together, right? They're taking one and they're making it dependent on the other. Right. So, like, ideologically, all of you are going to support a higher minimum wage, be it 12, 15, whatever the case is. Right. And you're going to have that as a default. right? That's a political posture. You're saying, like, the crazy thing to me is that you're going to go to the right wing and you're going to say, you're only going to get direct payments if you give us the minimum wage hike. And it's like, no,
dude, it's already dead. Why? I don't even know why you're wasting
I know.
time.
No, but I was just trying to answer the question.
Okay, so Joe, you were gonna say a thing. Go.
No, my whole thing is like basically right now is the bill has a couple things. One's the direct payments. The other is actually more unemployment and expanded unemployment for the people you're talking about, who are out of work. So so basically the Republicans, when they're in control, they try to get everything that they can in every bill that they can. The Democrats tried, they failed, they're moving on. Now, I think they will revisit the minimum. In fact, I'm positive they're going to revisit the minimum wage, but I don't blame them for trying to get it through. Because basically, in the grand scheme of things, a couple of days really doesn't matter. I mean, he's literally only been in office for 37 days, and this bill has only been on the out of committee for what, like a week. So,
well, I'm just glad that when Trump was still president, there was something that Republicans were trying to cram in. One of the bills was to make it so people who stream online. Did you hear about the whole copyright thing where they were gonna? It would have made it actually illegal, where you could actually see prison time for streaming copyrighted material online, and they were going to try to cram that into the stimulus bill too. So I'm glad the right didn't get to cram that in there.
That's ridiculous.
That might have been a bad line item, but I think the overall broad part of that, when they were going for stimulus when Trump was still in, was and I'm not a proponent of this, was the broad-based understanding of what the Section 230, right, that protects social media companies, which I think should be left alone, by the way. But I think that was the whole gamut of that.
But the whole thing is, though, it also has nothing. It goes to your point, though, that the Democrats and putting in something that's not related to the stimulus. The Republicans were also putting in things not related to the stimulus, whether it was a good thing they were trying to do or not.
Yeah. So it's not in a vacuum, though, right? We failed. You guys could have came up. Here's your money. Like it just seemed like such a straightforward, easy thing to do.
But the thing is, though, it's like, okay, well, the Republicans failed to get their thing, so we're going to try to get our thing, and it's simple as that.
Yeah, and I get it.
You shouldn't roll over just because the Republicans don't roll over when they're in power. So why the fuck should we?
And you guys get mad because we're so good.
Can I ask a question? I have a question about that whole. I'm going to put a thing into a bill. Do we have no rules or laws about how bills are supposed to be written? I mean, it seems ridiculous to write a bill, for example, about whether or not I can raise the speed limit,
There are rules for that.
and then tack on to it something about renting houses to people.
That happens all the time. It's part of the negotiation.
Yep.
But does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes,
if my bill is supposed to be about the fucking freeway,
Well, it's the only way that you can reasonably get what you want, right? Like you're not going to get what you want.
Is it the only way you can reasonably get what you want?
Yes, it is.
Because otherwise, you're depending on the goodwill of the other person. That, well, if I agree to your bill, you'll agree to mine. That never works because people are scumbags. So basically, it's like, all right, I'll give you the thing you want, but you got to put my thing in your bill, and we'll both vote for it. And
How about maybe you just write your own fucking bill? If you want a different thing, write a different thing.
It won't pass.
Ooh, is that crazy of me?
It's not. Yes, it is crazy because it's not going to pass. That's the whole fucking point.
Well, then maybe it shouldn't be in a bill.
This situation is pretty corrupt. I mean, this should not be the way that our government is run.
That is what I'm trying to say. Thank you, Kazum.
We are in a pluralistic society where we have people right, left, and center. And so what it comes down to is like, okay, I'm a right-wing politician. I want something that's right-wing. Well, I don't necessarily have the votes. So, but my constituents want this. But there's some other constituents who want something completely different. So then their representatives say, hey, well, I'll let you get that thing because it's not so onerous that it fucks up my constituents, but you got to give me something. That's why it's called politics. That's how it's always worked.
That's why it's called manipulation. Manipulation. That is what that is.
Negotiation.
No,
that's not
negotiation
cramming
is when
something
people,
cramming something into a bill is not negotiation. No.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So my favorite.
Can I go?
Okay, wait. Go. Who wants to go? I'm sorry. Vegas and then Vegas and then Agent.
So I'm going to go out on a limb. So it doesn't have to be that way, at least not for the moment, right? You guys haven't had this since 2008. So you own all three. You could kill the filibuster. I'm going to make a bold statement. You're not going to. It's not going to happen.
Nor should we.
So
we should make it a talking filibuster. But that's it.
Oh, you want to do that?
Yeah.
Just because it's funny or what?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
I'm not
entirely
sure that a thing should be overturned simply on somebody's ability to talk at length. Because if you gave me enough water, I am sure I could stand for a long time in a place and talk about more bullshit that you never even heard about.
You have to piss eventually.
You know what? Yeah, but there's no rule saying you got to piss in the bathroom.
That's what Catherine.
So I'm actually really surprised that, Joe, you said that you don't want to end the filibuster. I really thought you would have been on the other side of that.
That is not a good argument stance, though. I just breathed more hot air than my opponent for longer. That's not an argument winner.
Well, they're not going to go back to that. So
no, the reason why is because eventually, well, think about it, there were times when the Republicans had the White House, the Senate, and the House, and then there would have been zero ability to stop anything. So they could have just turned the country into right-wing mania. And the same way
babies would have been born in suits. It would have been awesome.
And meanwhile, and then the right doesn't want to get rid of it because it's for the same reason, because you don't want us to have free reign, whatever the fuck we want. So it causes people to have to negotiate so that interest on either end don't get totally shit hammered. So that's a good thing, and that's what the whole thing about bills is that, it's a way to obviously I want a more left-wing country than we are, but you know what? Those people on the right wing, they are citizens. They have rights too. They have desires too. They have wants too. They shouldn't be completely ignored because that would lead to a fucking revolution.
Well, I mean, it shouldn't be a choice between something being completely ignored and things being crammed into a bill that it has no business being in.
Yeah, I agree. That's ridiculous. Oh, wait, Agent had something to say.
So my favorite part of the omnibus spending bill, because I did look it over, was the part where we opposed China's ability to pick the next Dalai Lama. Right? Because there's this weird, we have the separation of church and state, right? But that would be like some other religion that is not even dominant in America. We're saying we want to protect that religion from the Chinese state, from them picking the next Dalai Lama to being a Chinese favoring person. And it's a spending bill for America that we oppose some other country getting involved with.
It is an omnibus bill.
I just want to say, here's my opinion on Dalai Lama, whatever. If more people in the United States, which is approximately 42%, can tell me what the Dalai Lama is versus then believe in angels, then maybe they can have a fucking opinion on the Dalai Lama. But if they can't, then they can go screw themselves, right?
He's a top Buddha guy, right?
Yeah, you know what? I doubt that more than 42% of Americans could even tell you what the Dalai Lama is.
Well, the whole point, it's symbolic. Well, yeah, but we actually want to address what you just said, because I don't think that members of Congress should be basing what they're doing solely on the ignorance of the American populace.
Also true.
I would hope that they would be smarter people, or at least talk to smarter people and do smarter things, because the average person's a fucking moron. And I sure the hell, I don't want to end up in idiocracy.
Well, that doesn't happen, Joe. That doesn't happen. They don't talk to
Joe, I
smart
want
people.
you to run. I think you need to take this forward. I think we need to.
Well,
I'll donate to your campaign.
That would make 2 people on our panel that are in politics officially.
Probably, I'm too bombastic. Although then again, Chris Christie and Donald Trump made me think maybe there's room for another.
You know what? No, Now I'm gonna embiggen myself, Joe, because I have something to say to you. And I'm gonna embiggen myself. Here it is. I don't know whether or not you're too bombastic, right? But in my vernacular, bombastic means a person who is a blowhard. They speak largely and perhaps over largely about themselves, the things they know, the things they do. Okay, here's what I think. I think that that's not actually you. Okay, what you are is you are a passionate person. That's what you are, and I think that that's what is necessary. What is less necessary is people that play the game all the way. Have a stance and stick for it. Do your fucking thing. Nah, bump.
So if Joe were to run, he would be the only person on this panel that's involved in politics in that way, because I lost my election bid and I decided to step away, at least for now. So
yeah, for like 2 seconds. But whatever. Like, everybody doesn't win everything. It's not about winning. It's about getting out there and making the effort and doing the thing. Like, that is what.
No. That is admirable. But if you don't win, it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. You kind of have to win for it
I want to fight you right now, like Mortal Kombat fight, right?
Let's go.
Man.
I agree with Rob. I mean, that's what I've tried to say to people that are further to the left than me, that like to pick up their toys and go home when the candidate's not exactly what they want. Is that
Kate?
You can't? Yeah, exactly, like Kate, because you have to, in order to get what you want, you have to be at least somewhat in charge. And
you are underestimating the power. Both of you are underestimating the power of literally just trying.
Really.
You are. You don't know. You are.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that I advocated for was on my platform was ranked choice voting. Right.
Yeah, which is awesome, by the way.
What is it called?
Ranked choice voting.
So it turns out the far right in my county.
Wait, sorry. Can I pause you for a second? Do you know what we're talking about, Vegas?
Nope.
Okay, can you please define, Rob, what is ranked choice voting?
Ranked choice voting is when you're voting, you don't just vote for one person. You vote for people in the order that you would like to see them win. Like there's like 5 different candidates running. Oh, I like this one the most, so he gets number 1. I don't like this one as much.
Yeah, I have heard of this. Okay.
So
I have.
It's a much more democratic way to elect somebody. Because it's not just like left or right and that's it. I mean, it's a much more democratic way.
It means that.
And
can I clarify?
It takes away. No, not really. It takes away the a lot of the power away from the parties, and allows the candidates to more stand on their own. And gives the public a better ability to measure them, because it's not party platforms they're voting for, it's individuals. So anyway, so that was one of the things that I wanted. One of the things that we found, because I was told in the beginning, you're not going to fucking win, and I knew I wasn't going to win. I live in Trump country. So, but I got 40% of the vote, which is pretty good. That's I got 40% of the vote, and that's the most of the Democrats.
So why are you sounding discouraged? It's almost like Trump voters don't hate you or something. Huh?
I know, right? It's actually the best that a Democrat has done in my county in 20 years. So I was proud of that. But what I found was my run has moved the needle. But I'm not going to run again. Not this cycle. I'm going to wait until the next cycle maybe, and I'll decide then. I think it's a bad look to run and the very next year run again. That's kind of, I think it's a bad look. So I stepped away. I'll let somebody else run, and then next cycle maybe I'll try again. But yeah, my run actually moved the needle, and that was fantastic. So
That's awesome, Rob.
But you cannot say that it doesn't matter if you don't win, and then simultaneously say my run moved the needle.
No, that's true, but you know what? You don't have.
That is my point.
But
it's very important that you do the thing. It's very.
I agree.
I'll fight you
It's
guys.
just
I'm
you
gonna
don't have
fight you
any
guys.
real power. I know, but you don't have any real power if you don't win, though.
Well,
You know,
no,
yes,
that's
you make
not
small.
true.
Turn that off. We can get a copyright.
Mortal Kombat. Who played that? Who played that?
Vegas.
That's what
No, I
heard
didn't. I didn't.
That was Mortal Kombat. Am I wrong?
No. I thought you were raising your hand to talk.
Yeah. So
Go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to hit up Kazoom. Like, I'm curious, like where you left off, or if you changed your mind on your point about. I guess it was our ringmaster, Sister Danger, also. But the whole coupling of different things together in the same bill, like how would you propose to take your universal health care, whatever it is, and then throw that up without also maintaining 67% of the Senate? Like, how would you ever work? Like, how would you ever get anything at all? I'm still kind of honest. I'm curious what your idea, like, how would you go about not having that, I guess?
Well, I mean, I guess the main thing would be it would require that the way that people write bills is something that both sides can actually agree on. You know, compromise on the actual positions within the bill. Don't sneak other things into the bill that to try to force the issue. You know, try to be more reasonable in the way the bill is written in the first place, so both sides can have a chance of accepting it.
Okay, I want to address that directly. That's what Obama did when he did the ACA, and the left wing hates him for it.
Because you lost not single payer, but you lost the public option by doing that.
Right. So basically, he wrote a bill to be more acceptable to Republicans, and the left wing hates him. So
Well, I mean,
people can only write bills relative to the topic they intend to write the bills on.
I mean, but the thing is, when you look at it, though, the ACA is quite an accomplishment. It is a step forward. I mean, some people on the left may have hated him for it, but at least he got something done.
I don't know why you would call that an accomplishment. I mean, it's an accomplishment.
I wouldn't have insurance if it wasn't for that. Like, I would have.
Okay, so that's the accomplishment right there. Fair enough, but
yeah, like, for millions.
But like so you guys are like so I've noticed this, right? So Bernie holds the purse strings at the moment, right? He's going to make a lot of insurance CEOs pretty rich. That's what's going to happen.
I actually didn't hear what you said, so I'm not.
So you think Bernie is going to make the insurance CEOs rich?
Oh, yes, okay. I do.
How?
I do. I think, well, because you don't have your public option, because that's not what the ACA is. If you like your premiums, like the people that are going to get relief through the ACA funding, like beefing up the ACA, right? It's going to be disproportionate. It'll happen, but in the process, you're going to make a lot of wealthy people more wealthy. That's what's going to happen.
That always happens regardless, whatever we do. So I mean, if we do that, and more people who can't afford insurance get insurance, I'm okay with that. And again, a way to counter that is to raise the taxes on those people we're talking about that are going to benefit by all the extra money. There you go. And that'll help pay for the people who are going to get the services. But my thing, to Kazoom, I mean, if you're okay with what we got out of the ACA, maybe. I mean, I thought it was a good step in the right direction. I don't think it's where we need to be. I'm for single payer, but it was a step. It helped get people who had no coverage, 23 million or whatever it was, get coverage, and that's a good thing. But my thing is that what I said before about the left not understanding the process is that we're not going to get a single pay. I don't know if there's any way to get a single payer system any time in the near future unless you put stuff in the bill that the Republicans want, because it's not just the 51 votes you need in the Senate. You have to get 60 votes for cloture. It's not 67, Vegas, it's 60, but still, you have to get 60 votes just to have the floor vote. So you committee,
60.
Your committee, the committee votes on whatever. That's a three-line party vote. It's going to be 11 to 10 or whatever how many people on the committee, and then it's going to get out to the floor, and they're going to have the initial debate. And then when you have a cloture vote, so you have to get 60 to say, yeah, we're done with debate, and we're gonna actually have a vote to see whether this passes. And unless you can convince 10 Republicans to come along, you ain't getting it. It's just literally not. There's impossible. And so all it takes is, if you get 9, still not good enough. So there's no other way. So you have to give them something, and it means either you compromise big on the bill or you give them something else in return. And I don't think that's sinister if we could actually get the single payer we want and not have it watered down to the point of being irrelevant. And it means you have to give them, if they want to name a fucking airport after Reagan or Trump or whatever, fuck, I don't give a goddamn. Or if they want to buy some extra tanks, I don't give a fuck. If we get the thing we need, as long as it doesn't destroy the country with whatever we put in there, I'm okay with that.
Well, I guess it's all right as long as the thing that they're trying, that the right is trying to sneak into the situation, as long as it's not just horrible.
Agreed.
Just like the thing that I mentioned. I mean, how horrible it was to make it so people can't stream copyrighted material, or they could see jail time. That's unacceptable. But I don't know. I see the point you're making. But I do think it would be nice it's a pipe dream, I guess. But I do wish that the parties were willing to work with each other more.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we haven't had a clean bill in decades.
Oh, is it my turn to talk? I don't got nothing to say.
Yes. All you go, Vegas, go.
Okay.
By the way, I was just going to say, I'm going to call it in a few minutes here, so.
Okay, well then let's move on to something more serious, which
So-
is
Circling back to your question about should the counties in Oregon should they be able to choose which state they want to be in, Oregon or Idaho? Okay, just hear me out here. We have this delicate balance where we have like 60 votes to break the filibuster and get a floor vote, right?
Mhm.
We also have a balance in Congress. And we have a balance with the Electoral College map. And we've had gerrymandering by Republicans where they're basically selecting their own representatives. And this is an extension of gerrymandering. It's like gerrymandering 2.0, where the actual counties themselves realize, hey, if we were part of this other state, we could keep this other state completely blue and not let the big city in that state sort of overtake all the rural areas. And
that's one interpretation. I consider it to be freeing the people of Crimea.
Okay.
You're trolling now.
The governor of Idaho is going to roll in there with tanks. He's going to take a National Guard.
Whatever, we already know what Idaho has to bring, and all it is a bunch of guns to their fucking Capitol house, okay? They're not going to roll in with tanks anywhere, and if they do, it'll be 2 of them, and the rest of us will destroy
This isn't
Idaho.
going to go anywhere. It's not really a serious thing. I just thought it was funny when I read that. I didn't even know what was going on.
Well, I mean, I
until
was
today.
trying to be funny in response. Did I fail?
No. But yeah, I read the thing about the whole Greater Idaho project, and I don't know. I got a kick out of it because it's like it's a meme of itself, right? So.
Well, I think people are kind of fed up with the way things are with the class warfare and wage inequality, and they're looking for just any way to change the balance of things.
That's kind of what I think.
And they're looking outside the box and like changing any rules they can. So, like, if it takes them amending their own state constitution rather than relying on their legislators by passing out,
Whatever it is.
for signatures for to get on the ballot, they're going to do it
because
That ain't what that shit's about.
But
That ain't what that
this
shit's
is like
about.
way back at the beginning of the show, though. AOD. This is what you just said is a literally kind of attached, like a Siamese twin to what I was trying to get at. Right? Is that you just said it. I mean, that's it.
That sounded kind of creepy, but
That's just a bunch of people living in rural Oregon that don't want to be associated with you hippies in Portland. That's all that is.
No, I think
Come
that there's a big thing that's happening with like income equality, for example, in this country. I think it's a very big thing that's happening with that, and I guess I see that manifesting itself in many different ways, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier when I was saying like the Maslow's hierarchy, right? It starts down here with this thing, and then there's like refinements to our levels of prejudice. But I feel like what he just said, what's the word I'm looking for?
The raising the top marginal rate will flatten that curve out a little bit. And we know that because we know what the rates used to be, and we know what the imbalance was before.
Okay, it is 9:20.
And this is something that I've said a million times. This is something I've said a million times about the tax rates and what they used to be compared to what they are now, and about how it worked, and that's what built the middle class. I've said that a lot, and I think only a couple of times I've actually expanded and said things like, at the same time, it's important to remember we aren't the country we were in the 1950s and 60s. We're not the manufacturing and natural resource powerhouse that we used to be. So to rely on the kinds of top marginal rates that we had in the 1950s and 60s, I think would be a disaster.
I want to go back to 1999.
But yes, I was going to say yes.
Well, you just want to hear Prince music, okay? Be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
but
you,
yeah.
though.
Didn't you have that point that I think you said something to the effect of AOC actually holds a conservative position. She was suggesting whether 70 to 90 top bracket.
That's more of a conservative tax rate than we had in the 1950s.
Okay.
Well,
then I guess it's conservative. Then.
I'm just looking for the 39% that Bill Clinton had when we had the only surpluses in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
I would be for. Here's where I would meet you. I would be for adjusting capital gains and starting to make parity or increasing capital gains taxes to make up for revenue, because I think it's a moral conundrum, and I don't think that should be set lower. But I just don't understand why that doesn't come up. It's like 90% of the revenue conversations on the left are income, and I'm like,
I feel like
capital gains is right here. There's a lot more of it over here.
Because again, a lot of people in the left don't know about capital gains tax. That's the thing.
Whatever that means. But maybe you should just hold on to that point, Vegas.
And we should call this
to a close, because it is 9:23. And that is a super worthy topic. And I think you should literally just bookmark that thought. And maybe we should come back to that long about the next show.
Well, I got one last closing item if you
Okay, then if that's how it's going to be, then you do a closing item. We'll go all the way around. I don't know if you guys see the same screen I do, but I see Vegas Kazoom, Books, Serious, AOD than me. Is that what you guys see? All right. Well, we'll just start with you. And any last things that you would like to say to our audience before I push the final destruct end button? I get to push the big red button tonight. I'm so excited. Go, Vegas. Your turn.
I yesterday found out that Lauren Boebert was on a podcast whereby she said she was going to Jello wrestle AOC, or she would.
Is there a GoFundMe for that? Because
I think this is a bipartisan thing that a lot of us would pay for. So if you can think of ideas or ways to make that happen, that'd be great.
I'm not donating more than $5, but I could probably scrounge a Starbucks, 20 ounce.
Thank you for having me.
No interest.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Of course, don't leave yet.
Don't leave yet.
I'm really glad to see Vegas on the panel today. I was very pleasantly surprised. I woke up and saw, oh, great, awesome. So I hope we can continue to get more people on the panel. I hope to see you again one of the next times, Vegas. It's great.
Sure.
I think that people who are in the chat and are sometimes even slightly disagreeable, I tend to think that most of them are assholes. Um, and I probably thought that Vegas was kind of an asshole. And the fact that he came on completely and totally erased that because he's got the balls to stand behind it. So he's here, and I think that's awesome. And I have no interest in the AOC Bobert Jello wrestling, but just to prove that I'm kind of person that just wants to help everybody out. I'd put $1 towards it.
Yeah, I think my Jello wrestling viewing days are probably past, but I do think we could raise quite a lot of money to help solve the deficit. But just real quick to what you said before about the capital gains, like I said, this just goes to what I said about the left procedurally doesn't understand a lot of things like the capital gains tax. So that's why you don't hear as much, at least not from the rank and file anyway.
AOD.
Thoughts on Bobert versus AOC? Yeah. We did it.
I have nothing to say I got nothing to say. Said before. I bled all I can. I won't bleed no more. Okay.
Wow.
So, I think I was just quoting Kid Rock right there. I could be wrong about that, but lyrics stick in my head. Anyway, okay, you guys. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight on our wild escapade of being unsupervised, right? Live and unsupervised here on the Breakfast Channel. We hope you guys will all join us next Saturday, same bat time, same bat channel. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good night. Yeah.